You give me the signal.
Okay, Chairman Dial, we are live on Facebook and also live on Zoom.
And live here.
And we are live here with some
Live here, live
important
in
guests.
person.
I'm
And we
very excited about this.
We have
meeting.
people in person. This is
We
fantastic.
sure
So,
do. Smiling faces.
Yep, welcome one and all to the regular meeting of the Cohasset School Committee for Wednesday, March 15th, 2023. We're here live in Learning Commons. I'm going to call the meeting to order. I'll start with committee attendance. Mr. Kearney.
Present.
Mr. Carr.
Present.
Ms. Ange.
Present.
Mr. McClellan. And Mr. Dial, present. We are here with a full committee, and so our meeting is ordered. Let's move to our pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so we've got a lot of line items on our agenda today. We have some great special guests, and I ran into a couple on the way in, and just this is my favorite part of being in the school committee, seeing our schools in action and seeing our children come and talk to us and tell us about what they're doing and show what they're doing. So I'm really excited to get to that. We'll start with public comment. This is an area of the agenda reserved for public comment, hence the name. And if you have something you'd like to bring up to the committee, this is a time to raise it, unless it's on the agenda, at which point we would discuss it at the appropriate agenda item. If you do want to just note that you have a comment, that we come back to you later, you can do that now. But please prefer substantive comments about agenda items for the appropriate agenda topic. So with that, I'll see if there's any public comments in the attendance or online.
There are none online right now.
Excellent. And hearing none, after an appropriate wait, we will close off public comment and we will now move to our invited guests. So we have our school committee student liaison report, Mr. Lankow.
Yes.
I will turn it over to you.
And I would add, Chairman Dial, that Mr. Lankow has some major impact on our second item, which is why his name is next to it. So maybe you can incorporate that in your report.
Definitely.
And thank you for being here, Charlie. Good to see you.
Yeah, well, thank you everyone for having me back. I thoroughly enjoyed my last meeting here, so excited to be back. So I guess I'll jump into I have a list of things I'll go through, starting with the school atmosphere. So I would say in Mr. Scott's weekly newsletter, he writes a paragraph or two each week about kind of the goings on. And I think he kind of hit the nail on the head when he said that from here, things will start to go on quickly through the school year. And I think that's very true. I think it's good and bad. I think it's good because, as you can see, it's getting lighter out earlier, which I like, and we're getting to spring sports, which I'll mention later, which is very exciting. And just the whole year is kind of going in the right direction, but it can also be a time to kind of reflect and kind of think, and especially for seniors, but also for juniors like me, kind of slow down, reflect, and think about how the year has gone so far and try and enjoy every moment, because I'll snap and it'll be June. So that's kind of what I thought there. And then I guess regarding academics, going off that, for those of us who are taking AP classes, those are a full year class. And I would say in the past week or so, my teachers have all kind of simultaneously started preparing us for the summative AP exam, which is in May. And those are often a source of stress for students. But I would say that with teachers already starting now in mid-March, that's a great step to be doing. And I think where I'm going to be leaps and bounds prepared by the time early May comes. So I think that's good. And then moving on to something else here, I was going to say that with last month, with Black History Month, we had a door decorating contest around the school, which I would say is a great success, and kind of seeing students kind of work together, kind of a creative outlet like that, I think is a great way to relieve stress that students are feeling and sort of raise the morale of the school as a whole. And then in addition to that, we had a dodgeball tournament, as you may or may not be aware of, last week, which was very competitive, but again, a great outlet for students and just kind of a way to come together as a school, and really there's representation from all 4 grades there in the high school, which is really great to see. And then also something else to mention is that surrounding clubs and such is that our Model UN, they actually left this morning to embark on their big New York trip for the New York.
40 to 50 students, is that
Yes,
correct?
I would say for my classes, there was a decent portion of my classes were kind of smaller today.
That's really large for a small district, just so you know. that's a big deal. So sorry, Charlie.
No, it's okay, definitely. It was, which is kind of exciting. I'm looking forward to kind of hearing about that and seeing what they have to say when they come back. But then kind of going to my clubs, I would say, I'm part of the math team and debate team, and these have started to wrap up in the past few weeks or so. And so that's kind of, I'd say, we're entering kind of the third part of the year, because the beginning is like just kind of getting your bearings in the fall. And then it's the winter, which is kind of when clubs are in full swing, I would say. And then now with those ones like math team debate ending, as well as Model UN, we're kind of entering that third part of the year. And then moving on to, I guess, athletics, spring sports begin this Monday, the 20th, which I'm very excited for. I will be on the tennis team. And we actually, for the tennis team, we made it to the Final Four last year. So we're looking forward to kind of keeping up with that momentum and seeing where we can go this year. And then regarding arts, we actually have a big arts week at CHS coming up next week with the recycled parts activity. I don't know if you guys are aware of that, but that was where students were had the option to kind of put together some sort of artistic creation, whether that be a sculpture or something along those lines, with recycled parts. And so that was actually moved to next Monday at 6:30, which will be exciting to see. And then also regarding arts, our all-school chorus concert will be next Wednesday at 6 at the Deer Hill School. And then our all-school band concert will be next Thursday here at our high school gym at 6 o'clock. So those will be very exciting events for the school, for arts in general. And so moving on to some positives I thought about kind of the school in general, as that's my role to update everyone here. I would say that, as I mentioned, the utility tournaments like dodgeball and the decorating contests are great for the school in general and just for mental health. And they're really, I can't stress enough, like the outlet for students who are working so hard in academics and clubs and arts and sports, like to kind of have like a fun kind of thing during the middle of the school day really makes a difference. And I'd say that's a huge positive for what's been going on at the school. And then other than that, I would say everything is going very well. So I don't have too much to report there, but that's a good sign. And then some things to address. So one thing I was straining, what can I say to kind of bring to your attention? And I'd like to say that I'm just the messenger here. I'm not too upset. But,
Should I leave? No.
but the classrooms, as I'm sure you guys are aware, our classrooms all got new lighting in the past few weeks. And I'm not entirely sure the purpose of the lighting, but I just have to say, as a reporter for the students and kind of teachers in general, the lights have not been terribly popular, unfortunately. And I just find that a lot of my peers and some teachers even, they can be like, they're just very kind of jarring almost. And our last lights, I know it's kind of, could be like a trifle topic, but I think the lights are definitely important. And I think just, I don't know how to describe it, but the lights are, they're just very aggressive, I guess. And so,
That's actually really good feedback.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because right now, actually, our prior lights, now that I'm thinking back, they had kind of a protective cap over them, kind of maybe soften the light a little bit. But these ones that we've got installed are kind of just strips on the ceiling. And so I'm not sure if there's further plans to kind of put that other cap on, but.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'm going to address that while you're bringing it up, but Sue, do you have thoughts on that?
They
yet?
haven't, they can be adjusted.
Yeah,
So I had it done in my office as well, because they were too bright.
Yes.
So they have different percentages that you can adjust.
yes,
So we can definitely reach out to facilities.
that's actually really good feedback because we can adjust that. You know,
That's
obviously, you notice that we have energy efficient lighting
Yes, yeah.
throughout our building, so the dims and then it goes, right? So, I mean, I thought that's what you might be talking about, but now I realize you're talking about the actual
Just severity.
severity of
Yeah.
light, yeah.
They can lessen them.
That's great to hear, yeah. I don't think my teachers really know about that, so that would be,
Well, you know, I'd be honest with you, this is the first I've heard of it, so that's good to know. We can get on
all right.
that. Moonlight, yeah, we should make sure it's an educational mood.
Okay. But other than that, I'd say everything's great. And so I guess moving on to my second piece of business here tonight is for the books I have behind me.
Yes.
So for,
Charlie, before you go on to that,
Yeah.
we just on your generic remarks, let's see
Yes,
if there's any comments or questions from the committee. So,
Okay.
I want to make sure everyone has the opportunity. So,
okay,
any comments, questions from the committee on Mr. Lankow's update?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Charlie, I love your updates. I think your outline is really helpful because it gives a comprehensive look at the whole school. We look at arts, academics, sports, compliments, concerns. It's like a really good feedback sandwich, and it's really well thought out, and we appreciate your feedback. And look, you're already getting solutions for the harsh lighting scheme of the high school. So thank you for being here, and thanks for being so thoughtful about your feedback.
Mr. Keeney, do you have a comment?
Yeah, Charlie, maybe you can help me with this. What is up with the stigma of lockers as a parent? To tell my son to take his jacket to school and he knows he's got to carry the jacket.
Yeah.
Like, I always had a locker in high school. Is it a Cohasset thing or is it just, why aren't students using lockers?
That's funny, because I mean, in middle school, certainly this was pre-COVID. I don't know if that's changed things, but in middle school, we all use lockers.
Yeah, they use lockers in those.
So that was a part where we leave our backpacks even in the lockers, or even if not your backpack, you would leave your books and only bring certain ones to certain classes and stuff like that. But I think I think a lot of high schoolers, like, our transition was kind of affected by COVID, but other than that, the lockers were never really seen to be used in high school. Like, at least when I came to the high school in 2021, there was really, I don't think anyone was using the lockers. They were kind of just, I don't know exactly why they wouldn't be used. I think students might like to have all their stuff with them at all times to kind of be prepared, I guess, but other than that, I'm not entirely sure.
It's definitely become a cultural thing. There were some broken lockers, but then again, that's not a reason not to use the lockers, you have to fix the lockers, right?
Yeah.
But it hasn't been something that has been brought to our attention as a need, except for maybe for you, Mr. Kearney. And that's a good, I mean, you're making change and difference, but I haven't heard a complaint from the kids about it.
Yeah, because they don't know better.
Well, they had it in middle school. They all have
Yeah,
a locker.
well, I guess it is, I guess you don't know what you don't know, right?
Mhm.
I mean, we didn't have parent-teacher conferences in this district. And people thought, I guess you don't have, I mean, this is an issue that, as a father, I gotta tell you, like, you guys all carry your bags, you could be talking about 60 pounds on a 100-pound child to be able to carry this thing in the back. This is my kids going to school. I'm all set, Dad. You're all set, but I'm not all set, and honestly, it's come to a point where I just don't, there's no rhyme or reason for it. I gotta be honest too, like, my son, they all sit at the same table for lunch, which is, it's great.
Mhm.
They all carry their bags because they don't have anywhere to do it. Some child stepped on my son's computer. It cost me $1,000. It's like, it's like, this, if that was put away, maybe he wouldn't have stepped on the computer. And honestly, for the future of our kids, I think we should really kind of look at this issue and say, maybe do a poll.
Well, I'll confer with Principal Scott a little bit more as to if there's any reasoning behind it, but that's an important piece, just to make sure I'm not missing something. There would be some capital items that would have to be addressed, because there are as we know from our building walkthroughs during the phase where we were working with MSBA, which again, we're hoping to do again, but there's a lot of broken lockers, whole sets of broken lockers and lockers that don't work that would have to be repaired as part of a building project. It would be repaired, but if not for building project, we've made a commitment to make sure that we fix things and make things as good as they can be, even though there's a need to make changes.
So why don't we propose this, Ms. Blanco, maybe you can take on Mr. Kearney's challenge and discover why the Cohasset High School has a culture of no lockers, and
Definitely ask around, yeah.
and come back with that, because I'll concede, in high school, I went to a school with multiple buildings, carried all my books with me, had a locker, didn't use it. It was a perfectly functioning locker too, so I think it may be just sign of the times, but I'd be interested in real life student feedback on that point.
I agree.
It's really, I think it's very productive. I think that's how you make change, right? You question things that maybe haven't been questioned for a while. And you drive that, and sometimes it's an easy answer, and just no one's asked a question. Right, so I think it's a good idea.
Any
And
further?
lockers are available, right? Lockers are available if they want them. Right?
So there are some broken lockers. There's sets of broken lockers. But there are definitely lockers that, many lockers that aren't used, and there very well may be enough lockers to outfit the whole student body.
So we'll learn more.
Yeah.
But let's see if there's any other committee comments for, Mr. Langcom.
If you had a couple of minutes on the lighting thing,
Yeah.
could you meet with our facilities people, maybe give them some advice on what a good level might be? And the student maybe get some pals together, if they're doing one room, sort of learn how it does, that way you can report back to the students, but you have now come full circle on getting something done around here, so it might be good for you to.
Yeah, definitely.
give
Well,
some-
I would recommend working with the person right next to you, with Ms. Owen, and also obviously Principal Scott, to do that. I think student input and also the staff input.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, probably the people who work in those rooms all day.
Yeah,
Important to talk
yeah,
to.
yeah. These
Stabilizers.
those groups, and
Yeah.
that's what happened.
Anything, Mr. McCollum?
Just Charlie, it's very evident that you take this role seriously and you put a lot of thought into it, and it matters. Because it brings us some important information, so thank you for taking that so seriously, and you know, you're getting a little bit of, you know, public speaking, public presentation experience while you're at it, so that's good, and I'm even getting messages from the community members saying how well spoken you are. So I think that it's apparent to more folks than just the people that are sitting in the immediate vicinity, so thank you so much, appreciate it, yeah, good work.
I just want to mark the occasion. I do think that this is the quickest ever Cohasset School Committee problem to solution
Mm.
that we've ever seen. Raised it, and as soon as it was raised, we found the solution. So thank you, Charlie, for bringing it up, and thank you to the administration for being able to address. So that's amazing. So yes, I appreciate it. Thank you for your updates. They really give us an idea of what's going on in the school and ways that you know we might be able to help out. So thanks. But now your next agenda item.
Before Charlie moves on, there is a comment about lockers, so you might find this helpful. Charlie, so Megan Barry of 11 Tad Lane said that my middle schooler has not used his locker all year and his backpack is extremely heavy because he carries everything. His main complaint is that his locker is too far away to access between classes. So there's your first data point.
Yeah.
That was middle school.
Middle.
Well, that's true. That's true.
That's-
So
So-
got
so
a-
that's
I got
a-
a similar comment about middle school.
So I would recommend to, and I'm sorry, that would make
Yep,
it.
Megan Barry.
I would recommend that, Ms. Barry, that you contact Principal Mills and tell him that, I know where I'm looking here, I guess I'm looking here. And tell him that, and see if there can be any adjustments made in that regard. You know, we certainly want students to have access to their lockers at appropriate times and not feel any stress in getting to classes. So, you know, maybe you have brought it up and there's been some reason given, but just, if you haven't, please, you know, please do so. And, you know, obviously, yeah, I'm sure he'll be responsive to it.
Great. Let's move on to Charlie, your next item here, disposal of surplus materials.
Yes, so kind of, it's the backstory of this for Q2, we're nearing the end of Q3 in the high school, but for Q2, so around January, December, November months, I was Miss Rudy, the library here, I was her library intern for one period during the day. And that was amazing, I got to help her out around the library and kind of do various projects for her, and this library reading project, we called it, was kind of the main one that I was responsible for. And so the goal of the project, as you can see behind me, I worked on this cart for the majority of the time, and the goal was kind of just to get rid of the books that are no longer needed for various reasons and to clear space for new books to come in to replace them. So there's kind of four main categories of removal.
Yeah, folks at home.
Okay. There's 4 categories of removal.
Oh, well, your code is not
Bags.
for removal.
Bags right there, Bill.
Maybe this wasn't worth it. I don't know. I thought it was at the time, and now I'm thinking maybe it wasn't worth the move.
Well, they can't see you because your screen is shared, but
Well, I can unshare it.
yeah.
At least you can see it.
I was just getting
Sorry.
It's okay.
Messing
So-
everything up.
The first category was kind of outdated nonfiction, and so these are in the works of being replaced, and that would be another future project. And I'm actually hoping that for my senior year I can get the internship again, so I can work on stuff like that. But these just include like factual books, like we had one book on like biology and cells from like 1960, which should probably be updated, and things along those lines. And then we also had damaged books to be replaced, like there's actually by David McCullough, the book Truman, which is a very, very big book, but it's falling apart. It's actually on the bottom shelf there.
It's the blue one.
Yes.
I have the same book.
It's a great book.
Yeah, stop
But it
share,
has to
so,
be, it has to be
stop
structured.
share so everybody
It
can
has
see
to
it. So
be-
next to Mr. Kearney are the books that, you can see. Not the nice things we have in the middle, but the easel, the books that were integrated.
I could even maybe even pass those around at the end to show you guys what they look like. See what I'm talking about. And then a third category was old fiction. And so these include like various Judy Blume books from like the 60s that are just very outdated that haven't been checked out in a while. So those ones would be weeded. And then finally, we have various classics, like a bunch of Mark Twain classics that obviously we intend on keeping, but some of them are very dilapidated and kind of bent out of shape. And so they're not being checked out for that reason. So if we can get those out of the library, clear space to get new copies, we can make sure they're readable for many generations to come. So, and I would just say to kind of close my remarks about the library reading project that the cart over here, I spent a lot of time and hours on that cart. So if there were any concerns about just kind of haphazardly getting rid of books, I would say that that's not the case at all. And every book has actually been tallied in a spreadsheet and gone through meticulously and blacked out certain parts of it. And it's just, the project was kind of my love project. And so I'm saying that in terms of the fact that it's not like we're just kind of getting rid of books for whatever reason, they really do have a reason to be.
There's no Fahrenheit 451.
Yes, exactly. That's what I'm trying to get across. That's all. Thank you.
Excellent.
Any questions from the committee? Mr. Carr?
So David McCullough is actually quite a famous guy. He's from Boston. His family lives in the area. And I bet if you wrote to them, they'd probably send you a copy of the book.
Hey, I actually think we have that book replaced
Oh, you
already.
do? Okay, great.
Yeah, that was one of the books we actually got, I think, last spring, but
Very cool.
Stand on.
Ms. St. Ange?
Impressive project, Charlie. Feel like everything you do well. So thank you.
Oh,
Thank you.
I'm just like, I'll thank you for doing that. I know it's a labor of love, and this is the sort of thing that, requires a lot of work, and commitment, but does make a big difference. So, one question I have is who helped review your list did someone review your list to make sure there was agreement on these are the books that need to be replaced?
yeah, so it was really mostly me and Mrs. Cerruti, the librarian here, we kind of went through them and decided that and I would say, in general, we were very conservative in the way we got rid of books. Like if there was any question, if it could still be useful in any certain way, we kept that one. So we were really deliberate on the books that books on the internet from 1990, get stuff like that.
Great. I see here that there's an asterisk indicating, do we vote here? We've got another disposal. Do we want to do both those votes at the same time, or do we need to?
Whatever pleases the committee. I wanted to make sure that Charlie was here for this part because of his role in
Yeah.
making sure that the proper books were disposed. You can either vote now, probably Charlie, it'd be nice for Charlie to hear that. If not, you can certainly vote at the end with the other one.
So this will be a required committee vote to approve the disposal of materials. And so I'd entertain a motion to appropriately dispose of the surplus materials as indicated by this chart and, or the cart and identified by Mr. Langkow and our librarian.
So
Second.
We have a motion from Mr. McCullen, a second from Ms. St. Ange. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No, the motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Langkow. Your labor of love has been completed. Please, respond and implement the resolution.
Certainly will. Thank you for your great work. It's an excellent example of, our mission, empowering students to improve communities.
Yes.
The work you're doing, Charlie, in many ways is a perfect embodiment of that. This is a good example. Made a difference here. So thank you.
And we've been so productive as a committee so far, solving two issues of business, the lights and the books.
Just keep going.
What I would normally do is just say, let's vote, let's adjourn. But we have the best part of the committee meeting coming up,
Thank you,
which
Charlie.
is our spotlight on those. So I'd like to invite Ms. Mosher, Ms. Fuelin, and the students up to talk to us. And Mr. Sullivan, Dr. Sullivan, would like to do a introduction.
I will, and actually, I'm gonna let two individuals do introductions. First, I'll let Dr. Scollins talk a little bit about Reader's Workshop and what this is all about, why we brought it here, and then I'd like Principal Sullivan, who's with us, to introduce our guests and of course our amazing educators who are presenting. And I'm gonna now move the card away, so do not be confused with the other project. So
Great.
I'll leave it
So-
to you, Dr. Scollins.
Wonderful, thank you so much. So Reader's Workshop is part of our elementary comprehensive literacy approach that we have adopted here in Cohasset. It is along with our phonics program foundations in three, and our Hegedy program, which is a phonemic awareness program. We just want to make sure that we have students that can code and understand how words work. We also want them to have good understanding, comprehension, and really enjoy reading and really are motivated to be readers. And so Reader's Workshop is that part that really takes all the things that the students know around the phonics pieces, those fundamental components of reading, and then we get to review Reader's Workshop. Now that is happening 3 through 5, and it is being implemented in a phased effect process. And the K through 2, there are some teachers that are implementing, but there will be full implementation of Reader's Workshop next year. So I'm excited because I've been walking around the buildings. I've been seeing how excited students are, and I don't want to take too much of this time because this is one of my favorite things. So I'm going to turn it over to our Deer Hill staff, and Principal Sullivan, would you like to introduce?
I would. So tonight we have some fabulous third graders here from Miss Mosher's class, and Miss Mosher is joined by third grade special educator, Mrs. Dumoulin. And I do want to read off some names. So when I read your name, if you could just give like a little wave to your fans out there in Facebook, TV, and streaming land. So hold on, I've got my little cheat sheet, so I don't forget anyone. We've got Luke Burns is here, and Caitlin Sunday, and Joy Roth, and Isabella Waganowski, and John Watkins, and Ava Diadama on here. And I'm hoping Susan might be joining us. She's coming from dance class, so if someone scurries in, that would be Susan. If not, she will definitely be missed. And I've had the pleasure this year of being in Ms. Mosher's class several times to see her Reader's Workshop in action. And she is a real leader in this charge. She has had some experience in the past in her work. She's done some work at Lesley University with some literacy and leadership kind of initiatives and training. And so I really think you've got a superstar here today and an amazing wingman who also has some great background in this work. And so we're so excited to have them here. We know who our stars are. And so with that, I will let them take it away.
Thank you. So today we wanted to give you a little kind of insight of what it looks like daily in our classroom. So we're going to do a little mini lesson for you, but I want to talk to you a little bit about what we've done so far this year. So we started with the first unit called Building a Reading Life. And during that unit, we established routines in the classroom. The kids learned how to organize their book bins, how to select books. They built stamina. We went through routines of using reading logs and how to log in their books, and really got them to think about what reading should look like, feel like, and sound like within a Reader's Workshop, and understand the components of the Reader's Workshop of the mini lesson, the independent work, conferencing, and then the share at the end. We had a mentor text called Stone Fox that took us through the first unit that was really engaging. The kids got to turn and talk about lots of different parts of the story. And we kind of worked through the story together to find out what happened at the end. So that end very sadly, but we enjoyed that book. The second unit that we worked on was called Reading to Learn, and it was a nonfiction unit, and we focused primarily on narrative nonfiction. They read lots of biographies and learned about lots of different people who have been important in the past, and we focused on main ideas and details. They used a strategy called boxes and bullets to identify the main idea and supporting details that went along with paragraphs that they read and even larger pieces of text. And then that led us into our mystery unit, which we recently finished. And that was my favorite of all. I'm not sure about them. I'll pull them in a minute. But they got to become detectives. And during the book, during the unit, excuse me, they got to read on high alert. We had 2 mentor texts that we read, The Absent Author, which was an A to Z mystery, and then The Diamond Mystery, which was from the Whodunit series. And both of them I thought were really engaging, and they were really great mentor texts for leading us through as detectives, finding clues, red herrings, and they really had to read on high alert. They learned how to take notes and had an opportunity to have a packet to take notes on, which many of them used a detective notebook case file during their time. And as we got further into mysteries, I gave them the opportunity to continue in this if this felt comfortable, or to then move into their notebooks and to complete their own notes on detectives, finding out who the suspects were and creating a suspect list, creating timelines, coming up with predictions, and really thinking about the clues that they were finding. So there was a way for them to move into an independent role or to continue on with this. I told them I'm not going to be able to give them a detective case file every time they read a mystery as they go through life. So they need to learn how to take some notes on their own too. Finally, we extended our learning, and I brought a couple of their projects. This one belongs to Luke. They had an at-home puzzle piece detective mystery book project. The whole 3rd grade did this. So this one is Luke's. And they had to pick a mystery at home and read the mystery, and then use some of the same things that we were learning in class and apply them at home. Who were the suspects and the main characters? Who were their detectives? What were the clues? What was the mystery? They had to do a retell at the end. So we have a representation here of Luke's, which he chose to write his handwritten, which was one option. And then we have Caitlin, who read another mystery, and she chose the handwritten option as well. And then this student is not here, but they also had an opportunity to use a typed template too, if they wanted to type, and that was posted in Google Classroom. So there are lots of different opportunities for them to present their work. That was their kind of at-home component. So I'm just going to pull from them. So out of your 3 units, the first unit was Stone Fox, Building a Reading Life. That's your first choice. Which one was your favorite? Second unit, which was Reading to Learn. That was nonfiction. Or 3rd unit, Mysteries. Raise your hand if Building a Reading Life was your favorite. Reading to Learn, Mysteries. Perfect. So we're going to recreate a mystery, and that was not favorite. So that was my favorite too. We're going to create a little mystery unit, a lesson for you today, which was a lesson that we did, and it's called Readers Apply the Work of One Kind of Fiction to All Fiction. But before I go into that, I will let Julia kind of give you a little introduction on what she does when she's in the classroom.
So hi, my name is Julia Dunlin, and I work in 3rd grade. And with specific students, I have certain academic goals that I'm always working towards. Sometimes we work in the classroom, sometimes we work out of the classroom. When I'm in the classroom, not only am I working towards those academic goals, but I'm just helping them access the curriculum and whatever the rest of the classroom is doing. So, and through that is differentiation. And that looks like many different things, but it typically looks like me bringing in specific tools or worksheets, or even sometimes me just bringing in a different language, a different way of saying it. So yes, that's just my role.
Perfect. So to simulate kind of what it looks like in our classroom, the students each have their own book bins up here. And you can turn around if you want to at this point, in case that's here. And in their book bins, they have a reading folder that they keep their reading logs, or they would keep their detective case file if we were in our reading mini lesson. Our mystery unit, excuse me, they have books that they're currently reading, and they've cleaned out their bins, so these are the books that they are reading right now, and they have Post-its in here. Everything we need for reading bookmarks are in our book bins daily. So we brought those just to kind of simulate what it looks like. We are always gathered on the rug together, and most of the time we have an anchor chart that will guide us through the lessons. So this is only my 2nd time teaching this lesson, so I'm going to try my best to not look at the script just as much, which the script kind of guides you through things, but I've really tried this year as I'm delving through the books to try and make it my own as much as I can. So here we go. Our lesson today is readers apply the work of one kind of fiction to all fiction. Okay, so readers, we are starting our third bend, which is the last bend in our mystery unit. And we are going to get some books. So I know that you've all read lots of mysteries, some of you more than one, some of you might be finishing up a mystery. But today, I decided I'm gonna try something new, and I chose a book for you. Now, I know a lot of times you like to choose your own books, Joy just won't choose my book for me. But I think a lot about the things I know about you and what you like about different things. I think about the sports and the activities that you talk about at morning meeting. So I've chosen some books for you. So before we go home, I want to just try it. So I'm going to pass out a new book to each of you. And I'm going to tell you that if you don't like this book at the end of our time today, you can turn it in. But I just want to give you an opportunity to try something new. Okay, so this is our last bend of our mystery unit. So I'm going to give you your next mystery book to read. And when you get it, I want you to look at the cover, I want you to look at the back, and I want you to think about this. This one for you. I picked this one for you. Love that book. This one. All right, so I want you to take a minute and I want you to look at your book. This is the book that I'm proposing that you read for your last mystery book. What are your thoughts? So what do you think about that? Less nervous. Today, I want to teach you that every time you read as a mystery reader, you're learning how to read as a fiction reader too. I want to teach you that you are, as a reading detective, learning lots of different skills that you can use when you're reading fiction too. Remember this book, Stone Fox, that we read? We read this book a long time ago, at the beginning of the year. And it wasn't a mystery. But we use so many different skills that we learn with mysteries when we're reading this book. Now, remember in the beginning, little Willie had a problem. Grandfather was what? Grandfather was sick. We didn't know why. We knew that little Willie didn't know why. Grandfather didn't know why. And I was wondering, what's going to happen? And then this man knocked on the door. Who remembers who the man was? Who was he? Who was Dr. Schneider? Do you remember who he was, what his job was? He was a tax person. He was a tax collector. And then we're thinking, why was a tax collector? Door, all these different pieces we're trying to think. This is a fiction book. But I know that as we were reading this, we read like detectives. How was this a mystery book? Can you turn and talk to somebody near you and think about how is this a mystery book? So how's it a mystery? How do I turn it? Okay, friends. I was talking with Joy and Ava, and I asked them to tell me about why they thought this was a mystery. And they said because they had to find out why Grandpa was sick, right? And that was kind of mystery. As we're reading, whether a book is a mystery or not, you're thinking, what's the mystery here? What's going on? And before I send you off to try out your new mystery books today, or fiction books, I want you to think about how many similarities there are between fiction books and mysteries. So I've created a chart up here, and you're going to help me fill it in. I want you to look at all of the black that's up here. All of the black represents what's the same between mysteries and fiction books. We're going to fill in some missing things And the things that are missing are still kind of similar to each other. So I'm gonna need your help. I'm gonna ask you to turn and talk a little bit, and I might just ask for your ideas a little bit too. Let's think about when we're reading mysteries and when we're reading fiction. When we're reading mysteries, what do we ask in the beginning of our reading? What's the number one thing we ask when we're reading a mystery? What's the number one thing you think we ask? Luke, what do you think we ask? What's the mystery? What's the mystery? I want you to turn and talk to the person next to you. What do we ask when we're reading fiction? What's the what? What's the mystery? What do you think? What do you think? What do you think, Bella? We ask, what's the problem? What's the problem? I heard somebody say solution too. A lot of times there's solution. Is there a solution in a mystery? Yep. In a mystery, we ask in the very beginning, because we know how mysteries go, we ask something. What do we ask in the very beginning of mysteries? Hold on to that thought. Versus what do we ask in the beginning of fiction? I want you to turn and talk to the person next to you. What do you ask? Who is the what? All right, Joy, what do you think then? What's another word for detectives? Which word, what do we use what? We use detectives and I heard somebody say it before. Can I ask a friend? Oh, I love how you have all those words. We use crime solvers, we use sleuths, we use detectives, but we use crime solvers a lot. Who is a crime solver? How about in fiction? What do we ask? Who are the characters, or who is the main character? I want you to think about how these are similar but different. You're looking for a mystery, you're looking for a problem. Look at kind of the same thing. Crime solver is usually going to be the main character. What are you paying attention to when you're reading mysteries? You have to pay really close attention to something to do what? And then in fiction, pay close attention to something to do what? What do you think? I want you to turn and talk to your neighbor about what you think about this. There's some more ideas in this one. What do you think? So what would it be to what? To solve. Nice. I'm hearing some good thinking. What do we need to pay attention to in mysteries? What do you think? John, what do you think we pay attention to in mysteries? We have to pay attention to the. You pay attention to the mystery. We're paying attention to mystery. What are we looking for? We're on high alert looking for. We're looking for clues. Solve the mystery. Remember, we're looking for clues, and we have to remember that anybody can be a suspect. All right. In fiction, what are we paying attention to? What are we paying attention to?
We're paying attention to like
main ideas and what comes along with the main ideas? All the details. We want to pay attention to details to do what? I'm going to put problem in. I'm going to use some other words to help solve the problem, to figure out the problem. Same thing. All right. I want you to think. We need to draw on what we know about the who in this one, so we can make some predictions. And we need to draw on what we know about the who in this one to make predictions. We did a lot of predicting based on what we knew when we paid really close attention to what in mysteries. We paid close attention to Bella. Suspects. We paid close attention to suspects. We learned that anybody can be a suspect. So who do we need to pay close attention to in fiction books? Suspects are another word for what? What are another word for? Characters. You got it. As you're noticing, even though these are different, they're so similar. When we're reading mysteries, it's just like when we're reading fiction. They just have some different names for what we're looking at. What should we be pausing to do when we're reading? 5 fingers, palm of our hand, we need to pause to what?
Take notes or draw.
Okay, what are we trying to do as we're reading? What if we read one page or one chapter? What should you do before you move on to the next one? Turn, talk to your friend and tell us what you think. What is the line? Okay, friends, what might we pause to do? And notice this one's gonna be in both. This one's for both. Bella, what are we gonna pause to do? We might stop and jot, and when we're looking through all of our information, before we're ready to move on, what do you think we're gonna do?
Detail.
Why?
Know what's going on and maybe make a prediction to what happens next.
This was my favorite one, and I think a lot of you enjoyed this with mysteries. Who can you collaborate with? Who can you talk with when you're reading mysteries versus when you're reading fiction? Who could you talk with, Caitlin? Co-detective. And for fiction, just a partner. All right, almost done here. Sometimes when you're reading, things might get, what might need to take action? And we might need to use some strategies when things might, what?
Get tricky.
Get tricky. What are some strategies we might use when things get tricky? John, can you tell me one?
Really slow down.
You might slow down. What else would you do? You might reread.
Think about what's going on in the text to try and make out like it's a word.
Your co-detective or your partner. Lastly, we need to think, how does blank go? We need to think, how does blank go? When we're thinking all about our reading. Say, Joy, can you give me one of them? Think of how. You got it. And think about how does fiction go? Friends, I hope you realize today that reading mysteries and reading fiction is very similar. So even though I gave you some new books and I told you they were mysteries, you know they're fiction books. I'm going to ask you today to try these books. Just give it a go. And at the end of Reader's Workshop, if you don't want to read this book anymore, you can change that in the library. But I'm really hoping that you're going to want to read it. And I'm hoping that at the end, when we come back together, you can give your partner or co-detective some information about why you're going to read the book or why you're going to maybe swap it out. But I hope you'll continue. All right. At this point, I would say off you go. Before we wrap up though, not all of our class could be here, but we wanted to give everybody a voice today. So I asked the students before we left to end the day, what they like about Reader's Workshop. Is anybody willing to read one of them? Ask a couple of different apps. They might not be yours that you read, or that you wrote, excuse me. Would you like to read them? I'm gonna ask you to turn around too.
Read next to loud for
Yeah. So the question was, what do you like about, it's yours, perfect. What do you like about Reader's Workshop? Turn around, let's make sure everybody from our class has a little bit of voice. All right, Luke, you wanna start?
Sure. I like reading independently because it's just some nice time to read a good chunk of a book and bookshop for a new book if I finished.
Awesome, Caitlin, can you read yours?
I like Reader's Workshops because I like reading different book genres. Reader's Workshop is also a time where I can read with a nice time and quiet one. I like it when you get to sit down and read any book you want. I like how we get to talk to a partner about are books that we have read. I like falling into the books and feeling what the characters feel. I also like reading for a long time, reading walks. I enjoy reading independently. I love getting lost in books.
Awesome. So thank you for having us today.
Great. Great job, everyone. So now we'll turn it over to our committee members to maybe ask us some questions. Mr. Kearney, any questions or comments?
I just think that's one for the great presentation. Thanks.
Mr. Carr?
Well, I want to go back to the Deer Hill School. I know it's hard when you get other people that aren't in your class. Thanks for putting up with us. This was a lot of fun. I looked up, so Google tells you funny things, and my son is now a sophomore in college. But 10 years ago, he was at the Deer Hill School in the 4th grade, and today was Trash to Treasure Innovation. I don't know if they still do that, so it's nice to see very cool things still happening at the Deer Hill School. So thanks for coming here.
Ms. Allen?
That was awesome. Great job, readers, and awesome job, teachers. I have to just compliment you as someone who's done a lot of training with TLA as well. That was like a really well done. Beautifully done. Should have been, well, it is awesome. So share that if that's somewhere. That's a great evidence for you. Thank you so much for sharing. It's really, really well done. And I just think that it's so obvious from these kids and from my own kids that a love of reading and also a lot of reading endurance has developed this year, which is something that was really hard to develop. I think parents, you can probably agree with me, when we were trying to teach our children at home, it's a little harder to convince them. You've done a beautiful job with it. Seems super engaged.
Mr. McCollum?
Thank you to the students. Thanks, guys. You guys must love being in Mrs. Mosier's class, right? So much fun. So thank you for reading and for sharing your thoughts. You guys did a great job. And for helping us fill out the chart, and figuring out why mysteries are kind of similar to fiction, reading them, how you read them. I must confess that I have had the benefit of being a parent of Mrs. Mosier's class, and so I have already benefited from her gifts, and it's very evident what an incredible educator you are. That what you just did is actually really hard to do, like in front of people and in a different setting outside the classroom, yet you were still able to engage the students as they're sitting right there. It took a few seconds, but then they got right into it, right? And I just want to commend you on that. I mean, it just shows like how awesome of a teacher you are. We're really lucky to have you. You're a huge asset. I also want to just comment on two things. One is the collaboration that you continuously fostered when you were going through the lesson, right? That's really important, and it's sort of it's an example of something that's, a little bit newer from when maybe all of us were in school learning. We didn't do that as much, and it's so much more engaging. And so the kids, they're not just listening to you and then like sort of dozing off or just like, drifting and not paying attention. They're fully engaged, and you can see it. And they're all talking. It took them a few minutes to come from this weird setting, right? But like even then, you were able to do it. So it's really effective. The other thing I want to talk about, or just note about Mrs. Mosier in particular, is that you're a real innovator with the way that you do things in the classroom. Obviously, you are required to adhere to certain standards and requirements, but the way you do that and some of the things that you do, some of the way that you organize your classroom, organize data and information about your students so that you can better educate them. For example, you noted in the lesson that you had selected the book based on some of the activities and interests that they have. And I just want to commend you on that. It's like, a lot of examples here, a lot of evidence that we can sort of, that I would like to see throughout all of our classrooms. I'm not saying a lot of teachers don't do that, and I don't want to like put you on the spot or embarrass you or anything like that. But I think it's worth noting how wonderful a job you do, and it's so easy to miss, which makes that demonstrates how effective it is. I mean, you sort of seamlessly incorporate all of these things into your lesson without, and someone with like less of a trained eye would even understand. And if I 4.5 years ago was brought on the school committee and started being exposed to all of these these wonderful concepts, I wouldn't have necessarily known it, but as I'm going along and listening to you and watching and picking these things out, it's like, you do an amazing job, and we're really lucky to have you, so I want to make sure to note that. You guys are so lucky to have her. She's a great teacher. What is your, what do you guys like doing the best in school? Who has like like, you guys like reading the best, or math the best, or science, or what? Anyone? Reading?
Math.
Math?
Math.
Okay.
Science.
All right, science. Yeah, all right. Science guy, good. Well, I hope you guys are loving third grade. You're already more than halfway through. Can you believe it? You won't be the youngest ones in Deer Hill anymore. Okay, well, thank you guys.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, because you guys are awesome. Very good work. I just want to highlight for people who are watching, this is a real show of the quality education that our kids are getting here. And really the change in education and the education methodologies we're showing, it shows, kids working together. You guys like working together when you're learning?
Yeah.
So when I was doing that, my teacher would have just filled in the blocks for me and I'd have to memorize them. You guys were figuring it out like detectives, right? So that's fantastic. So I'm gonna go home and read a mystery, because I'm inspired now that I know how to think about it as a detective. So thank you very much, and thank you for the example of this lesson and how it's an example of our wonderful school. So I appreciate it. Any, Dr. Scollins or Dr. Sullivan, any closing remarks?
Yeah, I think, thank you so much, students. Such an amazing job. Still on. I think, you bring up some really good points, all of you, about, this process and this approach that we're taking. And obviously, this was wonderful. And this is what's happening in our classrooms, to your point, and having DLA come in, helping them with that embedded professional development that we were talking about makes such a big difference, because they're getting in real time, they're getting opportunities to practice what they're learning in that collaborative way too, because they're doing my grade level, they're practicing with the students, and I think that makes a really big difference. So and I think also one of the benefits of this is students see their teachers as learners also. And so that means that we're all learners, and we're all learning to do something new. And it allows us to take risks and take chances. And so I couldn't be happier with how this is all playing itself out. So thank you so much. You were very brave.
I'm sorry, Dr. Scott, just before we finish, I neglected to recognize Ms. Dumoulin as well, who, and, I'm so sorry, I'm so focused on classroom instruction, and I also, obviously have more of a personal relationship with Ms. Mosher, because my daughter went through class, but we could also see, and I noticed this as the lesson was going on, so our, special education teachers will be there accompanying a lot of lessons and being able to provide not only support to the instructor, but support to the students. So students that may be processing information in a different way or in need of other tools, you'll be there supplementing that instruction, so they're benefiting just as much. And I could see that when you're there, not necessarily working with necessarily a special education student, but assisting in the lesson to further engage the students. And it's really important that we recognize that too. And it's, our special education staff in Deer Hill does such a wonderful job. And I did not want to neglect that at all. Because I did notice that. I wanted to mention it. I forgot, and I got caught up in Mrs. Mosher's accolade. But thank you for everything you do too. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think, Ms. Mosher is wonderful. I completely agree with you. But but I think one of the most wonderful things is that she's great to collaborate with. And that's one of my other roles, is collaborating with all the classroom teachers to make sure I know exactly what's going on, so I can come in and be prepared and I know where the kids are. So yes, that's another part of the role.
And I'll just add that, I want to hats off to Dr. Scollins, to Principal Sullivan, to all the teachers, because this is embedded PD. And this is PD where they're learning, and it's, this is a great example of two wonderful teachers. Ms. Mosher said, this is our second time going to this lesson. So like anything else, this is not meant, that was masterful, but like anything else, as you practice them, you get better at it, it becomes more second nature. What we're really doing, and that I'm very proud of, and what you're doing, and I'm helping to support, and you're doing, is to build common language across the district. We're building it through right now, K through 8 will be doing the same language, the same techniques. You saw turn and talks there. You think about the triangle of success. You have the teacher, the student, the curriculum in the presence of a task. And that's what makes a difference. And this is really high level stuff that's gonna make a huge difference with our kids, not only in inspiring their love of learning, which is a motivational factor, but in how they process information, which is a scientific factor. So I think this is a great example of all that coming together with the programs we have in place. So I think the future is bright. And this is a great example. And you students were amazing. And thank you to the parents who are here for allowing us to teach these amazing students. Because let me tell you, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. So that's all. I'm saying.
Long school day for them.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Look, they're
everyone.
still smiling and they're great. And they're doing a good job. Thank
All
you.
right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'm gonna quietly.
Have a great night's sleep. School in the morning. No storms coming tonight. Thank you.
Those are always the uplifting things.
Absolutely.
The real core of what we're doing. We often get caught up in buses and parking and lights and things like that, but it's a great reminder to see.
Yeah, they make it run, but
Yeah. It's a good reminder to see it actually in action. So
Thank you, Principal Sullivan.
I just want to point out one other thing that I
Mhm.
actually really like about this program, and I liked it prior to Cohasset having it.
Sure.
But just the fact that it helps kids to identify as readers.
Mhm.
I think, so often we talk about the language that we use with kids and what we're calling it, scientists, readers, mathematicians. And you can say it all you want, but I feel like this approach really helps kids to identify that way, not just to hear it and respond to the word, but to truly identify as readers. I mean, clearly they are doing the work of readers and they know they are because it's stated clearly, they're going through the steps, they're completing it. It's just, obviously, we just saw it very well executed.
And also to your point, they were leading into the next part of it, which was for them to do the reading.
Correct.
So, the mini lesson.
Right.
You
Yeah, Mrs. Miller saying, okay, now be on your way. Like, not every classroom in the world can you say, be on your way, and people just go read. That takes a lot of training and a lot of confidence. So, very well done.
Well said, very true.
All right, so moving forward on the agenda, we have our school news from our superintendent of schools, Dr. Patrick Sullivan.
So, Mr. Lankow did such a wonderful job. He literally covered everything in my major in my school news. I wanted to talk about Reset Your Hearts and the All-Town Concert. That was well done. And Deer Hill Circus happened. I don't know, Principal Sullivan, I'll put your spot, but since I just did. You want to say a couple mentions about Circus Schmirkus or whatnot?
Absolutely, I'm happy to talk about it. So I inherited the circus from my predecessor, Dr. DiChiara. It was her passion and it soon became mine. I think that the circus is it's a circus in residence program where a circus company comes and spends a week at our school working with all grade levels, and it culminates in a performance by our 5th grade students, an evening performance. And in the past, we worked with another company that unfortunately did not survive COVID, but we were familiar with Circus Smirkus, and with the amazing help of the PSO, they were able to connect us and get us back in the circus game. And so it was a new experience and we didn't know what to expect from a new company, but I think that it was a really positive week. And what I noticed, and in debriefing with staff, that it was very student-centered and really focused around a growth mindset and that idea of students stepping out of their comfort zones outside of the academic or sports realm. And actually today I had an impromptu conversation with a student and said, so tell me what you thought about the circus. And he said, yeah, I really liked it. And I said, well, what did you like about it? And he said, I got to try new things and I got to spend time with students, with classmates that I don't normally get to be in, because once they start grouping by act and things like that, then all of a sudden they're learning alongside peers that maybe they don't spend time with. And that's not something I would have come to that conclusion on my own. It was exciting to sit in the audience and hear parents behind me say things like, wow, after only a week, they can do that. Or I never thought they'd get up on stage, or look at them, they were standing on top of balls and all those kinds of things. But it was a perfect
dovetail with our focus this month as a building on growth mindset and perseverance. We have a gotcha ticket system, and so students are being acknowledged for those characteristics. And we really saw that come into play with the circus. So while at first glance, and I know when I first came to the Deer Hill, I thought, really, we're going to take a week to juggle? But it's really so much more. And as we saw last year at the commencement ceremony for the high school, it made the valedictorian speech. So it really is a indelible memory for students in Cohasset. And so I'm so excited that after this hiatus, that it's back. And we look forward to, I think really now it's really cemented. I think it's not going anywhere. So it was great.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you for that. And then just a couple of updates that I want to make sure I emphasize, may come up later in, that's strange. Gotta go a little bigger than that. Looks like we're on a plane. Oh, that's strange too. Well, it's gotta be strange. I got, there you go. All right. I can deal with that. A couple of things that are happening, and we may mention them as we go, but I wanted to make sure I did. Save the date for the celebration of our multicultural community, our first multicultural event, which is April 13th from 6 to 8 p.m. Right here in the middle high school. I believe it'll be in the gym. And just to mention again, you may have seen in the Navigator that you can join as a registered exhibitor, meaning having a table and talking about your culture. And you need to do that by Friday, the 17th. So leadership team will have a table. So there's some exciting. We're very excited about that. And I know Vice Chair McClellan, you're on that. I don't know if you want to say anything about this particular activity.
No, thank you.
Good. Okay. Super. And then also the METCO Advocacy Day. We have that coming up on the 21st, which is a chance for METCO districts to advocate for the continuation of METCO at the legislative level. That's exciting. And a couple of other things. We did talk about recycled parts, so I don't have to mention that. But the PSO is sponsoring a wonderful basketball. I'm going forward to this. There it is. A basketball showdown between the Cohasset teachers from Deer Hill, Principal Sullivan leading the charge there, and also from Osgood with the Harlem Wizards. And that is on April 4th. And all the tickets go on sale they've been on sale since February 27th. That's exciting, where we'll see our own, not only our teachers, but we have some police officers playing as well against the Harlem Wizards. And I don't know, pretty even teams out there. It should be a great event. Very, very excited for that. I understand the ticket sales are going really well. So I think we're going to have a pretty packed event on the 4th. So that's extremely exciting. And that's something that we want to thank the PSO for wholeheartedly. And that's really it. Those are my updates.
Excellent. Well, we'll keep you on the spot with the next agenda item, which is naming and dedication of the Deer Hill School Innovation Commons.
Yes.
Regular attendees of the Cohasset School Committee meetings will recall last week we received a donation for helping us fund a renovation in our Deer Hill Library, creating the Deer Hill School Innovation Commons, which will be an excellent educational tool.
Absolutely.
And I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Sullivan.
Yes, it's my pleasure to talk about this. Again, once I won't go through the bio that is here, but as as someone who has the opportunity to form a committee to look at, as it is in our policy, to look at the naming of spaces. This, based on the contributions of Ms. McNamara, seemed to be a fitting discussion to have with a committee. So I did create an ad hoc committee, and actually some of the members were Principal Sullivan, Chair McClellan, and we talked about the chair, sorry.
Whatever, everybody gets confused.
Chairman,
I've longer.
I pointed figuratively. Chairman Dial. And we did speak about the merits of naming the Deer Hill Innovation Commons, the Susan B. McNamara Innovation Commons. And based on her extremely amazing contributions to Cohasset Public Schools, just a couple of the items that she helped influence was she started a great books program here. She helped form the Arts Boosters and the Cohasset Education Foundation, which is the very foundation that is getting the donation and providing it for the schools. And she was among the founders of the parent-student organization. So just in the last couple of minutes, I mentioned all the things that those, that some of the events that those clubs and groups are sponsoring rather. And Ms. McNamara was a chief sponsor of all of those. So with that, I'd like the committee's approval to name the entire Learning Common, Innovation Commons, which does encompass the Marjorie Murphy Library, which will be named that. The whole kit and caboodle, so to speak, will be the you have the STEM lab, STEAM lab, the Innovation Commons, the whole space that we'd like to dedicate as the Susan B. McNamara Innovation Commons.
Just to be clear, that was the recommendation from the ad hoc committee.
Correct.
And as a member of the ad hoc committee, I'll just mention that the factors we considered in making this recommendation to the full school committee were, just as Dr. Sullivan mentioned, the overall contribution of Ms. McNamara to the schools, represented not only by, obviously the financial donation, but really the founding of two key organizations that give critical support to our schools. And her legacy will be felt by our schools for generations to come through that. And we wanted to recognize that with this memorial space. So that was the recommendation of the ad hoc committee. So with that, I'll open the floor to any questions. If none, then I'd entertain a motion to do so. But Mr. Carr.
I'd be honored to make the motion to name this. What a lovely, but
Excellent. We have a motion on the table.
I do just want to reiterate about the Marge Murphy Library being within the Commons, because as a person who grew up here, and Mrs. Murphy was my librarian, and it was a very big deal when the library was named the Marjorie Murphy Memorial Library, just from a few voices around town, like, wait, are they renaming the library? The Marjorie Murphy Memorial Library will lie within the Innovation Commons. I just think it's worth repeating
Absolutely.
so that it's heard by community members.
And this is going to be, I appreciate that, this is
Yeah.
going to be a real premium space for learning for our students grades 3 to 5, as the room we're in right now is for students 6 through 12. So I look at this as a really landmark occasion. And
Ms. Ange, to your point, I will mention that the ad hoc committee did discuss that exact point at some length and wanted to make sure that we were not watering down anyone's memorial and memory because there's significant contributions there as well. So we're trying to recognize everyone, and we did not think that that it would conflict because the Innovation Commons is a broader space.
Right.
So
Mr. Chairman, I second Mr. Carr's motion.
we have a second on the motion, so we'll go. Let's do a roll call vote. Mr. Kearney.
Aye.
Mr. Carr.
Aye.
Ms. Ange. Mr. McCullough.
Aye.
And I, Lance Style, vote yes. So that is unanimous. So Dr. Sullivan, please move forward with the commemoration of the Learning Commons.
absolutely, and I also want to, again, I know you share this, to thank the CEF for their work with us, and we'll make sure we celebrate this correctly, and thank you very much to the McNamara family, deeply.
The CEF, which she founded, is responsible for the nicest areas in our school system.
The yes,
The room we're sitting in right now is
Is done
because of the
quite a bit.
CEF. And
Yeah.
this is currently, I think, the nicest space that we have in our school system right now.
and as I mentioned, also the contribution that Ms. McNamara made to arts too is also noted and will be felt in this space as well.
I'm very appreciative to that group. I have friends that sit on it and dedicate a lot of time to it, and this person who I did not personally know, that Mr. Carr knows, founded it. It's just such an important organization because, as we're looking at what might be done for our buildings to improve the overall product that's delivered to our students and our teachers, it's becoming evidence that it's difficult to figure out the financing and the solution that works for the community. But in the meantime, we are so fortunate to have this group that provides these spaces, for our students from private avenues, I mean, if we didn't have this space, we'd probably be in a very, very antiquated library, and it's just, I don't know, I don't know, it's just, our buildings are getting old, and the fact that the CEF is able to deliver this product to us and things like it, it's really remarkable, and I'm really appreciative. Our school system wouldn't be the same without them.
Meaningful and lasting contributions, and also just, special thank you to Kristen Quinn, who was very much the voice of this back and forth throughout the process, so, and everyone. But just, it was Kristen was at the point of it, so.
Exactly. I do have a comment from Kristen Quinn, as a matter of fact.
Oh, there you go.
Kristen Quinn from 219 Sawyer, and also the president of the Cohasset Education Foundation. Thank you to the board. We can't wait to get started on this. And I echo that. I'm very excited about this.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kristen.
We have been really productive as a committee thus far. And the productivity is not going to end there. So, Dr. Sloan, I think I'll turn it over to you. We have considered in prior meetings the 2023 to 2024 district calendar. And I believe that is coming up to committee for vote.
Sure is. So the version that you have in front of you, if you remember last meeting, rather, we went over a draft and had discussions. And part of those discussions, we raised some thoughts by the Cohasset Teachers Association, and some by the members, some also by the e-board, but basically all their thoughts that we put out on the table for your consideration. This particular calendar doesn't reflect any of those changes. The only change on it is the addition of the half day before the break in December that happens in December through January.
Winter intersection, the winter break.
Yeah, winter break. Because we did make a commitment to make that consistent. So it's a half day, and that'll be a consistent process that I'll recommend going forward. Take a half day before that break. We added that Ms. St. Ange brought that to our attention. She was absolutely correct. Other than that, it lies exactly as you saw it.
I'll open the floor to the committee for any discussion on the calendar.
Me first. Oh, thank you.
Skearney.
Yeah, I'm just looking for
Stop sharing.
the parent-teacher conferences on.
They're on there, I believe.
They are.
October 25 and 26 is PK through 5.
The middle school and CHS conference are in April, and I believe they're also in December, is that the same way? Sorry, no, November, first week of November and then last week of April.
They're in there.
They're there.
Yeah,
September, you got
I do have them circled. I just wish we could just write parent on this, and just, because you would be confused to think that it's just saying, see, it could be like a teacher's conference or something. I
So
just would like to add in that that's.
indicate them as parents.
Right.
The reason we don't say parent is because we try to drift to say the
Yeah.
word family now, because it's, not everyone has.
Parent.
So it would be, we could say parent guardian conferences, but
Yeah,
we just
I
kind of use the
appreciate
word
that.
conference.
But also, conference is not a word you would use for something that teachers are doing separately. That's professional development.
Yeah, but I
And
don't think the average person would know.
But I'm telling you, that's what it is, and it's noted on here, professional development full day, professional development half day, and then there's conferences. So like, those are substantially separate words. I don't think that, well, using the word parents isn't appropriate anymore, but
We'd have to do parent guardian.
yeah, sure.
Right?
But it's also
Fine
a
with me.
different thing.
Well,
I think family, I'd be that's a little challenging, it's not family, because then it's typically,
Parent,
it's
guardian,
between the
fine.
guardians and the parents, not children. Children don't technically go to these conferences, so if you say family, it changes.
In many contexts, you say family and it covers that, but in this one, it might be misleading. I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
But no, this is why we're here, like whatever the
Yeah.
committee feels is appropriate for the wording, we'll go with.
I'm curious because I do not yet have a middle schooler, but I soon will. In the elementary level, lower and upper, we get school emails that alert us of when these days are coming up. We're not just left, here's the approved calendar, good luck, hope you figure out when the conference is. I'm hoping that they would be brought up in newsletters, school newspapers, other times.
Middle and high school does that also.
So I think also in the name of
Because they also, have to si- the parents have to sign up, so all that information does go out. And then they have to actually sign up, right? So that information does go out higher. So
Yeah, I just think like strictly from a formatting perspective, right? And I know Jennifer works really hard formatting this, right? If we add more words, it's gonna go over the line, it's gonna bump everything out of whack. You're getting the extra communication from school. This is the placeholder, a conference is a conference.
So I understand your point, making sure it's clear. I do think with the remaining conversations that we're have around these and the newsletters and announcements, I think it's limited likelihood there be some confusion. I also don't know necessarily we are approving the piece of paper. I think we're approving, and when we approve the calendar, we're approving the days off, the days on, the start, the finish. And so I think if we decide that we need to, in getting more feedback, we need to change the piece of paper and the actual word on it, I think we could do that. But for the purpose of this vote, I think we'll say that we're approving the calendar, meaning the actual days of operating school. That makes sense. So any other questions, comments? That I entertain a motion to approve the calendar as presented.
So
Second.
Motion from Chair McCullen, I'm doing it now. Motion from Vice Chair McCullen, seconded by Ms. St. Ange. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the calendar is hereby approved by the Class School Committee. Dr. Sullivan, please implement the calendar for next year.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated.
So that moves us on to our agenda block E.
And I want to thank my administrative assistant, Jennifer Saritas, for so much work on the calendar. It's a hard document to manipulate. So thank you, Jennifer.
And so I think at this point, we move to our agenda block E, teaching and learning. Again, this is the core point of our schools, so it's very critical for the committee, in my view. And so I'll think here we turn it over to Dr. Leslie Collins to give us an update.
Absolutely.
do
Thank
that.
you. Thank you, Howard. You do.
Power. So, since my time being here in Cohasset, one of the things that we implemented and we kept it going even during COVID was learning walks. And learning walks started with our leadership team, and it is an integral part on how we collect data on what we're implementing. One of the things around making sure that change happens is that you make sure that there's clear expectations, that everyone understands what those expectations are. Then you inspect those expectations and what we've implemented, and then give feedback, right? Because that's then how we improve. And so our learning walks are just that. And so we've been doing this all along for the past couple of years. Last year, the department chairs went on a learning walk for the first time, and we did the middle school. This year, we have added in the elementary schools, and so we took the department chairs to visit the Osgood because that was their first choice. They wanted to go see where it all begins. And so it was a really wonderful experience. We gave them the things to look for. So they're using the same look for that we use as a leadership team. We're looking at student engagement. We're looking at the environment. We're also looking at our cultural responsive teaching practices or inclusive practices and looking at those through the lens of student engagement and environment. So they understand what they're looking for also. And they were first in a state of shock at how beautiful the Osgood building is. So that was their first takeaway. They loved the stairs when they walked in, the size of the classrooms, the lighting, the high ceilings, that for them was quite a surprise for them because they had actually never really been down there before. Then they started walking through classrooms. We broke it into groups, and you can see some of the pictures of the teacher, the department chairs, the teachers, the children. We told them, sit down, make sure you start chatting, ask them questions, and they were like, we can just sit there. I said, yes, you can. And we looked at, how were students reacting to their teachers? What kinds of things were they doing? And then we came back and we debriefed with them and looked at this, used the same protocol that we always use for our learning walks. What did you notice? What are you wondering? What are your inspirations? We, as a leadership team, often look to make suggestions. This is not what we were doing with the department chairs. It was really just the noticings, wonderings, and inspirations. Their inspirations were, how do these students know the vocabulary that they know? The academic language that was happening within the classroom around mathematics blew the math and science, actually all of them, away. They were doing, at the time, I believe they were doing three-dimensional shapes in first grade. And students were talking about all of the components of vertices and faces, and they knew exactly what they were talking about. So it was really enlightening and gave them a real good perspective on actually what's happening in our classroom. They noticed the things that you noticed for Reader's Workshop, the collaboration that was happening, how students in fact were turning and talking to each other. They wanted to know how could they do those strategies this early on. They were in awe of the teachers teaching the multiple content that they do. When it comes to middle and high school teachers, they teach their content area. But the fact that our elementary teachers teach it all, they teach math, science, social studies, reading, SEL, and at the same time, making sure that all of that comes together. So anyway, so it's very exciting. They can't wait till they get to do the next learning walk. And then math specialists, we meet once a month, as I do with the reading specialists in a separate meeting, and twice a year we get together with math and reading. So math specialists got to visit Osgood, and one of the things that we're looking at, not only are we looking at for engagement and things like that, but we were really specifically looking at Number Corner and what's happening in Number Corner, and also what kind of resources. Well, we know what the resources are, but how are we storing them and how are they being used? One of the things that around our math program is that we have workplaces. Those workplaces are something the students need to be able to have access to and be able to really be self-serving. And so we looked at all of those pieces and really trying to figure out what's the best way. Some of this is really operational around, what kinds of storage units we need. We purchased some, what's happening. And so that was really wonderful. And one of my favorite moments, and you can see the picture down on the bottom, you can see all the grownups. Well, what happened was the math specialists, as we walked through, there was Mr. Vinton and a support person in the classroom, because all of the teachers for that grade level were having some common planning time that Principal Farrell has created for them around Reader's Workshop. And so they weren't quite sure of what the problem was for the kids. And so Mrs. Cronin, who's the middle school math specialist, kept saying they really don't know what they have questions. And I said, do you want to go help them? And so she said, absolutely. So they just jumped in, and they were all there, and all the students and the adults were all working together to solve that math problem. And then this is what we really encourage people to do. You can see that Chrissy over to the right, she's a math specialist. Get in, ask questions. Ask kids what they're doing. They're going to tell you what they're doing.
Just want to point out something. This is a great example of how we can learn from each other. Learning walks, we started with the leadership team to build our capacity to know what was happening in the district and to help others. And now what we have is we have the ability because it's designed to have teachers going into other teachers' rooms to share best practice. And we will reciprocate this by having elementary folks come up to the middle and high school level too, so you can really get a good sense. But, you gain so much from going into other people's rooms because you see, geez, I do it this way, and I probably could do it that way even better, and you start to build your own repertoire of teaching. And it's really how it brings up the whole district in terms of the ability to focus. And then if we attach that to our initiatives, it's just a great way to de-silo learning and to open it up, which helps everybody teach better, and it helps the kids have consistency across the levels. So it's nice to see this starting to take hold, and kudos to the teachers for having, the confidence in the process, and also to opening up the rooms, which they should be very proud of.
It's really, yes, it's been a wonderful process. And this year also, the principals had ghost walks, and a ghost walk is a time when actually no one's teaching, but you still go through the classrooms, and you're actually looking at the environment, and really to kind of your point too around, oh, look at how that side of that classroom is set up, or well, there's some really interesting anchor charts. I bet I could do something very similar. That would be really helpful. Or I wonder how they use that, and then they go right and talk to the teacher. So, so it's a really nice way to get used to doing it, because it can be a little intimidating for you to go into your peers' classroom. So we're working on building that capacity. But when we do our reading meetings or our math specialist meetings, we are rotating buildings and doing a learning walk right in the beginning of the meeting, and then coming back, debriefing, and then continuing on with our work for the day. So. And then our reading specialist went to the middle school. And so that was really exciting. You can kind of see some of the things that we saw. Again, we were looking at our look fors through the lens of really looking at ELA, literacy and English. We actually hopped into a social studies classroom also to see what was happening, because we're also looking kind of like, where's the student work? What's happening around writing and literacy? And so that was a really great visit. And then today we had our leadership visit, and that was preschool, and they came in looking for leprechauns, leprechauns and some golds. Unfortunately, they didn't find any with us,
Well,
but I did hear.
Principal Scott was laughing. He did say if they do find gold, then we'd have to come to the school committee because we can't accept it as a gift.
We have to prove the acceptance.
That's it.
Yeah, that is true. But just such a wonderful, wonderful time. But yes, they did find it, just in case anyone's wondering, they did end up finding it.
Yeah.
And so you can see up to the right, that's a workplace, which is really a game, but that is tied into the curriculum for our bridges. And you can see we have leaders down there talking to kids, asking them what they're doing. And they'll tell us, and they'll explain to you exactly how the game works or what it is that they were learning. And then we debrief at the end and talk about our noticings, our wonderings, our inspirations, and again, some suggestions. And then the principal will create a feedback memo, and that goes out to the staff so that they know what we're looking for. And we look for trends and patterns. We're not looking at the kind of the one thing that we saw, because that's not really a trend or pattern. But if we really look at what are those things that we're seeing overall, what are those inspirations that we're seeing, and one of the things around going into Osgood, and of course all our schools, is that warm feeling that you get at Osgood. The teachers smiles, the kids smiles, the engagement, really, really wonderful. So
And fidelity of instruction across the
and
board.
just seeing it from classroom to classroom, whether it's foundations or whether it's the math program, whether it's our new program Integrity, we're seeing that. Even Readers Workshop, they are rolling it out in a little slower fashion in Osgood. One, because we did not have the materials, they were not ready. So we've asked teachers to volunteer to be part of it, even if they haven't volunteered to be part of the actual coaching this year. Everybody's doing it. So right now they're word detectives, really working hard on that. So it is really nice. And these are our meetings. And one of the things that has evolved also is that this year, principals are asking us to look for things that specific to what they're wondering about. In the past, we've been looking at our look fors. Now they're saying, you know what? In our look fors, we're always looking for those pieces around engagement and environment, cultural inclusive practices. But what else? So as you can see, and also we were kind of looking at small group instruction. How are students engaged and how are teachers engaged? And so that gives us a little even more refined focus on what we're doing. We go to Deer Hill and then off to the middle school at the end of the year. Any questions about learning walks before I? All right, and this really helps us drive our instruction because it gives us information and data about what do we need to do next. And you can actually see some of it here. One of the things that happened this week was the Grade 8 Sustainability Showcase.
See it around.
And these are impressive. These are 8th grade students who have chosen an area that they are interested in. They work in pairs, however, they do have individual components, and they must create, so they do research, and then they must create an action plan. And the next part of this is that they're going to implement their action plan. And so they opened it up, and we actually had people from the Department of Ed, which was really exciting. And we're doing some work with Department of Ed. Mr. Scott wrote a grant, and we are going to be part of the showcase for the state at the high school level. Only, I think, 21, was
I
it
thought it was
20?
18 or something.
Yeah, it was definitely a low
Very small
number
number,
of people that were accepted into the program.
little feather in the cap.
Yeah, so that's going to be amazing, and I'm sure Mr. Scott will talk more about it.
And there's an
And Mr.
expert
Wills.
component to this too.
Yeah, so they
Which
have
I
to
love.
reach out, so they have to research, so they have to, so they learn a lot about what kind of sources are appropriate to use. They have to find an expert, they have to speak with that person, get information from them. They have broken it up into different components, such as one of them was, teen stress, student stress, what does that look like? And then an action plan about how they want to make a change based on what they learned. And so it was really great to see. And then the families come in and talk, and then the following day, 6th grade and 7th grades classes come in so that they know what is coming next. But they had a lot to say, and it was really interesting, and so impressed by their ability
It's really
to.
nice
talk.
family engagement around an academic initiative, so it's nice.
And yeah, it was really interesting. They were so articulate. Even some, if you see down to the left, we have some gentlemen that decided to put on their blazers and get all dressed up. And so it's really exciting. And then just a little reminder that we do have the opportunity to have the April Vacation Accelerated Math Academy. It is a full day program. I got a couple of questions. It is full day and it is a full 4 days. That is part of the stipulation of the grant, so I can't change it. I had some parents ask, could we just do a couple of days? Could we just do half? We cannot. So I'm hoping the final time is this Friday. Right now, I only have very few, which I
Tall
can,
order.
it is a tall
Because
order,
it
and
strips them of the radiation.
it's really challenging. I will say, when I applied for grants for the vacation weeks, it also ties into summer, which is how we did the summer programming. This grant is not tied with that. However, I can't imagine that we are the only district struggling to really do something with this. I did ask the state if we could work collaboratively with other towns. Case, and so this is where we're at. So if we can run it, I'll know by Friday. I will tell you that we were actually be able to staff most of the classes with our own teachers. They were really excited to do this. We were going, it's just it is really tough. And I knew that when I wrote the grant. I'm just putting my last ditch effort to see if there's see what we can do.
No, it's worth a try.
We didn't. I couldn't get it
Yeah.
off the ground. We couldn't get any staffing. It was really hard.
I just feel like that's the time of year where it's easier to like.
Yeah.
Yeah. Our kid in that.
I know, Situate, I think.
Situate ran it.
Yeah, I think they were able to
Very
do it.
small groups though. I mean, a lot, very nice low ratio, I guess I should say.
Yeah, I can't even, I don't even have enough people to,
A low ratio.
I don't.
Yeah.
So anyway,
When did Situate run it?
February.
February. Still, it's the 4 days. It's a long day.
It is. It's another school week.
It is, and so you'd have to really, so I have no idea. I mean, I'm certain that we're not the only town that will return the money. I'm hoping, I'm actually gonna ask them, like, can I use this for the summer? See if I can apply, but we'll see. So anyway, this was really. just
Summer would be
like-
perfect.
Right, so
And
we'll
it
figure
makes
it
so much
out.
more sense.
I know we've had the same conversations.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I interrupted you.
No, I
Yeah,
interrupted you. No, I was gonna share a couple of the local driving schools
Mhm.
have April break accelerated drivers for the break. So 10th graders, you probably have a hard time getting
Right.
10th graders. So,
Yeah,
and it's offered locally. It hadn't been in a couple of years. So
right. And then,
There's some
and it's
other
a full day
competing
kind of
things.
thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're trying, but it is,
it's a great idea.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for trying to, if you don't ask, you never know.
Right, I
So-
figure it was worth, it was worth that. So, so that was really what I had. I just thought we would focus on, our learning walks and how that is improving our practices and how we use that and how we're building that out. And the more capacity we build around learning walks, the more, the more information we have. And then we will, like, we were talking about teachers will soon become involved in that. But at the building base, that's also another place where principals will start having learning walks and having a focus area that they want to look at so that they can look for trends and patterns. And then this was already talked about, so I didn't have to say it, but I just wanted to make sure that was in there because that's really.
6:30 Monday.
And then you do know that we have professional development tomorrow afternoon and Friday, and it's very much building based. And I'll give you more information about that in our next meeting, next time I'm here, just to talk to you about exactly what teachers were doing, but lots of building based activities that are going to be tied to all the curriculum that we're working on. With that.
Any questions on the committee for Dr. Scollins? Thank you, Dr. Scollins. And now, next agenda item, Mr. Keeney, this came from a point that you have made in a couple meetings. So we wanted to have a quick discussion
Yes.
on academic readiness. The discussions we've had were focused at the time at, honors or high honors designations. But it exposes a point of discussion about how we make sure that students who are, excelling in academics are also recognized in the same way that students are excelling in sports are recognized. And so with that, I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Sullivan,
Yeah.
to introduce the idea. I do want to stress this is not a decision point for the committee at this point. This is just a opening of the idea and the beginning of a longer term discussion as to
Yeah.
what tools are available.
Exactly, and I appreciate the discussion. We certainly are incredibly interested in making sure that we acknowledge a broad diversity of achievement for our students, academically, social emotionally, perseverance, growth mindset. We want to make sure that we acknowledge students in the accolades they do in extracurriculars, whether it be theater or music or sports or anything. We want to make sure that we give opportunities for students to achieve and to find their strengths. And then that we have a broad range of recognitions. We want to also make sure that we don't pressure students within those recognitions to conform to some ideal that they have to be perfect and that they have to perform well in particular areas. We want to absolutely stress process as you do learn about yourself, and if you work through a process, that achievement level that you reach is so much more valuable than if you don't. And actually, there's some danger in not understanding the benefits of a process. So we always want to advocate for that. Having said that, as we move into the last year of our strategic plan and move into our next strategic plan, this is an issue that and I say issue, it's a topic that we really want to make sure that we are listening to the needs and the more the desires of the school community and the families, to make sure that we're acknowledging your wonderful students' achievement in every way we can. So what I thought we'd do today is, and Mr. Kearney, this does come from your comments, the genesis of it around honor roll. But it did awaken a whole bunch of thoughts in my head thinking, well, what other, and I don't think we should stop this, as you said, this isn't a one-time discussion, but what is it from a community perspective that, what types of events would you like to see? What types of acknowledgement ceremonies? I have lots of ideas about how I did things when I was a principal, for instance, but it needs to be unique to the community you're in. It needs to be unique to the building that you're working with. And again, acknowledgements don't really take hold unless there's buy-in for it. And the buy-in has to come from the staff who's working with the students, the principals who are working with the staff, the families who are going to be attending the events and acknowledging the kids, most importantly. It's gonna be really important to them. So if we're gonna build a more robust system of recognition, which should include more academic recognition, just getting a sense from this committee who is representative of the community on an initial discussion of what you would like to see and what you think would be effective. So I'll let you lead the discussion, but I just wanted to put that out there because I thought that was a really important first step that we can bring back to our leaders as well.
I appreciate that. And before we open up to broader committee discussion, since this is the first time we've had it on the agenda, I don't know that we're going to yet have the input from the community on specifics. We can obviously offer ideas as our own, as members ourselves. But I do take you up on your invitation that this is a longer term play, and we should maybe talk about it either as in our communication subcommittee or invite feedback through newsletters.
And the school councils.
And the school councils. I think this is, really understanding what the needs of the community and our student liaisons. I think that these are all stakeholders that we should engage. And I think what we should do now is if the committee has any ideas or thoughts or comments about the direction of travel for this, I think that'd be great. But my own view is, we should, as community members ourselves, engage with our peers, our members, the community, solicit input through our student councils, our school councils, as well as through any other mechanisms where we can get parental input, and then see if we can develop a framework for what makes sense.
Big part of family engagement is understanding what engagement is effective.
Right. So with that, I'll open up to the broader committee, see if there's any comments, initial thoughts. Ms. St. Ange.
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts. I think it's really important that we are not the main deciders or inputters of what happens, because the kids and the teachers are more a part of this. So for example, in my experience, when the higher up powers make a decision about something that might look great in announcing certificates, and then those are announced publicly, the kids who get them, maybe it's great in that moment, and then those probably go home and get recycled, because who needs more paper at home? And then the kids who don't get it end up in tears, and it messes up their whole day. So I think it's going to be the most important to ask the students what they think should be recognized and how they feel comfortable being recognized, and the teachers what they think is a significant thing to recognize. And we've all had things recognized in our lives, and maybe that happened back in 1999 or 1987 or whenever we were in school, and maybe it's different now for a reason, and that's okay. So those are my thoughts.
That's great, and your thoughts as an educator are especially valuable in this, and I do underscore the idea that we do want to get that input from students, from teachers. I think those are critical stakeholders.
Absolutely.
Thinking about this, because we also want to get the input of whether people feel like they're not being recognized. Is that a gap we should even close? So, but it's certainly been observed by Mr. Kearney, by myself, and other parents have commented to me about this idea generally, but not specific enough to really think through it. There are downsides, as you mentioned. We don't want to create a culture where we have too much stress. There's actually a couple of things here. Teen stress has been an item for our kids to look at. So we don't want to create more of that. We don't want to create people going home in tears either. So this is all coming from a positive side. So any other comments from the committee in general?
I just, after hearing Charlie's very eloquent presentation today, I immediately thought maybe Charlie and Mercedes could help us with this in some way, because I think the student input is very important.
Yeah, my whole committee could.
It's just maybe, it's just something to think about. As someone who didn't get a lot of accolade as a student growing up, but I know this will surprise no one. Look, I think this has to be handled well, and I think everybody's input along the way is going to be important to the process.
Gold star for you, Mr. Carr.
Thank you so much. I think the first is the first for everything.
Any other comments, thoughts, Mr. Kearney?
Yeah, Lydia makes a good point. I think that you do have to look and ask maybe the teachers if they see something that needs to be recognized, right? What about a perfect attendance record? Something maybe the teachers see, and then we can maybe go to the student and say, hey, we really want to recognize you to the school that you haven't missed a day. Or there's some of your community service projects that have been fantastic. You know, some of the kids who did come up for the Eagle Scouts made a difference in doing things in the school and encourage kids to be recognized. But I think it's definitely, you do want to make sure that you clear it with the student too, that, hey, we want to recognize you for all the hard work that you did. I think it's more of encouragement than disencouragement. So like, I think there's a soft way you can do recognizing somebody without, isolating other kids. However, without making it so challenging, but understand that some kids step up, and they step up and they should be recognized for stepping up. I mean, some of these kids, do homework all day long. They just do so well. And not to know what rank they are in their class, if they're in the top 10, should we say that, hey, we got the top, you made the top 10? I don't know. It's just conversations that I think that you have to kind of circulate with the community. With recognizing that you don't want to demotivate kids either.
Any other
And
comments?
thank you for doing
Any comments?
I've thought about this a lot. And I certainly appreciate the concerns, first identified by Principal Scott, reiterated tonight by Dr. Sullivan and Ms. St. Ange. But I think, I keep on coming back to the general model on which the middle school student government is based right now. And it sort of, they solved the problem there that was very prevalent in traditional student government models, which is it became a popularity contest and maybe isolated kids that had interest in something like that, but didn't have as many friends to vote for them or something like that. The way they did that, in my opinion, was they made it a little bit more subjective. So that it wasn't just, oh, who has the most friends? It was like, well, who has an interest in this area and who may have expressed that interest in a very unique way, and that's sort of those are the choices you have. I'm not saying we just adhere to that strictly. I'm just saying as a basic concept, that's an interesting model to be thinking about when we're talking about this, because I do think it is. I agree with both Mr. Kearney and Ms. St. Ange. I think that it is important, and I'm really glad Mr. Kearney basically got this discussion going. Like many important topics, I think Mr. Kearney raised this, and I'm extremely thankful and appreciative for this one. But it's really important, I think, that we recognize students for non-athletic accomplishments, and we celebrate, innovation or passion or excellence in some way. That I think it may be a way that we can actually engage everyone. It is really important, though, that we celebrate academic achievement and more publicly. And I think that we could do that by having grade level specific awards nights like we do for the seniors. And they don't have to be, who is the smartest, who is the best. It could be, maybe there's certain parts of the science curriculum where they all had to do this similar project, and someone might have done it in an especially interesting way, or some group may have accomplished something that was especially impressive, and the team, the science department sort of got together and thought about all the students and thought about someone that probably, or some group that maybe stood out. That's just, but now, in terms of the concern that we don't want to alienate students, I agree. But if we do it the right way, I think we'll be able to celebrate and engage and really mitigate any sort of feelings of alienation. That said, I think that an important part of this is also, and I think we started at an appropriate grade level, an appropriate developmental age, but I think an important facet of this is also the consideration that, not everyone does get a trophy in life. And while we may not be giving out trophies, in real life, some people get promoted, some people don't. Some people get jobs, some people don't. some people get raises, some people don't. And, you know, and those people, it changes. It changes from time to time. And some people are good at math and some people aren't. And some people are great at history and knowing things about history and some people aren't. So I think that we can, I think we need to embrace that a little bit. I don't think that we need to shelter our students too much, but we do need to certainly acknowledge that concern because it is a real one. And especially when it's being, you know, brought to the forefront by educators. That I personally respect. So, but one point with St. Andre is that we should absolutely not be the final arbiters in this. But these are just thoughts. I thought a lot about this because I think it's actually really important. So I just wanted to share those thoughts with everyone.
This is exactly what I
May I add something?
Yes.
I think one thing that I do, clearly I disagree with a lot of this discussion, but I think that something that Principal Sullivan is doing that is not necessarily unique to Deer Hill, but it's being done well, is kind of hyper local small moment recognition. So there's a theme of the month and then kids are kind of caught in the act doing something. So I think it's really difficult to be something all the time. And to always do well or to always do whatever. And like, yeah, people don't always get trophies in life, but like school's also real life. So let's recognize the moments in which they are doing well under certain positive themes. I think that's a nice direction in which some schools and districts are going. I also, and I guess this is just me projecting how I like to be recognized, it's like very private and one-on-one and personal in that moment. And it doesn't have to be a celebration. So that person can be celebrated and feel special and share it with whomever they want to share it with. And it doesn't have to be on a stage. And some people do like being recognized on a stage, but like that can be great for some and then harmful to others. So I think like we can recognize people without having it hurt others.
I'd like to recognize that wonderful remark, great remarks. But no, on a serious note, your right skepticism it does come through, and that's why I think your perspective is especially valuable. Because it's very easy to say, of course, we recognize academics, and of course we should do this. And so, you know, your input on this process is especially valuable to me because you'll make sure that make sure that we get that right balance and we don't lean far into one direction or another. So, but I think what I'm hearing from the committee, that a general idea is this is worth looking at.
Yeah.
And so, you know, Dr. Sullivan, we look forward to hearing more as individual committee members. If we do want to reach out to our peers and get thoughts and bring them over, we can put this on as a later agenda item. And Dr. Sullivan, as you gather information from our school student liaisons and importantly our teachers.
Yeah.
Let's bring all that input together. This might be something that we think about forming a subcommittee for to make it a little more efficient. But let's see how the process goes as we.
And I think I appreciate the input. I welcome it. I think it's sometimes if you go to build something, you don't ask the stakeholders, all the stakeholders, you know, what is it that you think would be effective? I mean, I really appreciate your comments about how staff and students should drive this. And I meant to emphasize that when I said it needs to be authentically about the building. You represented something that Principal Sullivan's doing that's authentic. I can point to other principals about things they're doing that's authentic. I mean, the recognition of the sustainability, that was symposium, that was student recognition. But if you don't ask the question and continue to ask the question, then you run the risk of doing things one way and being myopic and not hearing from the community. Because at the end of the day, we all want the same thing, which is for students to get recognition for doing something that up to their game and that they worked hard for, that they saw through to the finish, and that they did it well. And that's what we're trying to do in a way that that really, I think, supports the families.
So
And just to clarify, when I said real life, I meant adulthood, is basically what I mean.
I know exactly.
Not to diminish the reality of school is
And,
real.
and growth, yeah.
I'm talking about adulthood. I mean, our job is to prepare the kids
Well,
for
It's just
adulthood.
important to be careful with our language.
But
What's that?
It's just important to be careful with our language, which is why I clarified.
Yes, well, thank you.
And we are trying to build resilient kids. We're out trying to help build resilient kids, and that's the idea of, which almost become a trite phrase now, but it's a really important phrase, is growth mindset. Growth mindset doesn't mean that you don't fail. It's quite the opposite. So you do fail, you do fall short. How do you react to that? What do? I mean, everyone in this room has, have become successful because they've been able to persevere through things in their lives that, weren't easy, and they've been able to figure it out and overcome that. So I think that's what we're trying to inspire. But we also want to make sure they know that they're special too. And so I think there's a piece to that. So appreciate all the continued input and ideas that are really good.
So let's keep that on the radar and appreciate the discussion. And for the next agenda item, I will turn it over to our Director of Student Services, Ms. Barbara Swan.
Thank you.
And I think you do have the power.
All right.
I have so many windows, I'm just gonna dish out power today.
Delegation.
Yeah. We keep my sanity with like, because I do get kind of insane with this thing once in a while, so. And I'm supposed to laugh, but.
I would like to apologize to the committee first that I did not get things to you in writing for your packets ahead of time. It was just not to be done. However, what you are looking at right now and what you will be looking at for the next part of my presentation also really is just information that I want you to see kind of on the big screen. And then for the next part, I will explain, it is going to be posted on my website. But to start with you, as I do every month, I want to start with our numbers for the last month. So if we look at our data for February, you can see that at the elementary level, we had 6 annual reviews and 10 at the secondary level. Reevaluations, which are the triennials, which involve testing, there was just 1 at the elementary level and 2 at the secondary level. If you were to look at the initial evaluations, and you'll notice in referral source, I made the adjustments that we discussed last month. There were 3 initial evaluations from the elementary level. If you look at those within Cohasset Public Schools, 2 of those came from parents, but 2 of those students were not found eligible. And 1 came from a non-Cohasset Public School student, which means that their parents have chosen for them to attend a private school, but being residents of our town, we move forward with the assessment whenever an assessment is requested by the parents, and that student was found eligible. And at the secondary level, that, again, 3 referrals came through parents, 2 of them from within our public schools. 1 was found eligible, and 1 a non-Cohasset Public School student referral, and that was not found eligible. It was a short month, but there were 25 meetings overall. So it was a good amount of meetings. And does anyone have any questions or clarifications around our data for the month of February?
I have a question.
What would be an example of independent evaluation?
That is a good question. So an independent evaluation, what is referred to there is if a parent seeks out an evaluation on their own that they choose to fund, and then they bring the evaluation to us, and we move on that evaluation, and we see if it impacts anything that's already in place. If the student's already on an IEP, are there things that we need to, obviously we do need to consider, but are there things that we need to add into that IEP? If the student is not yet on an IEP, the team would get together and consider that evaluation and see how it matches up with the things that we are seeing in school. But that would be separate for something that we do within Cohasset itself.
Is it used often? Just as a-
So it is often used, I will say this with a clarification around it. It is often used if parents are looking for a diagnosis that a school system can't provide. So for example, while oftentimes our evaluations mirror and can match what a lot of independent evaluations do, in an independent evaluation, you can get a clinical lens and often a diagnosis that you can't through an educator.
Such as a neuropsych or.
Got it.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And even though we might mirror a lot of that testing that's done in an outside neuropsych, we still won't take that next step. We can't take that
I
next
see.
step to provide a diagnosis.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yes.
Ms. Small, do you have, off the top of your head, roundabout idea of how many, when we have parents bring us initial evaluations, how many are determined to have, or to be eligible versus how many are non-eligible?
So an independent evaluation is not an evaluation generally through which we determine
Sorry,
eligibility.
not
Give me more
general,
general.
just generally speaking.
Generally
So in the
speaking.
second column, we had three
From
from.
task for a referral.
That's
It doesn't come to an MTSS.
Yes, so when the parents come and do a referral, we do an assessment and we determine eligible or ineligible. Do you have an idea of how many are eligible versus how many are ineligible?
That is what we're starting to track now through all of these months. So at the end of this year, we'll kind of do a compilation of that and see, you know, what are the comparisons of that data? What does that look like? What does it say about, you know, our parent referral process, our MTSS process, all of those kinds of
Right.
things. And
But
how
as
those
it stands now, you have a.
At this moment in time, I don't, but I can tell you that as this year has gone on, more of the referrals are coming through MTSS process. Lately, it has looked as though, and I say this with some hesitancy, but lately it has looked as though our numbers are showing us that more students whose parents have brought them forward are not necessarily meeting eligibility for special education services than are. Those referrals will, you know, be then looked at if the student might be eligible for a 504, or if there are interventions that perhaps the student has been receiving and are continuing to work and it stays at that level and that's all the student needs.
Helpful.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to stop that share. And what I would like to talk about next is I would like to talk about the, there it is, thank you. I would like to talk about our latest CPAC meeting. So we had a CPAC meeting during this month of March, and it was a wonderful meeting. We were very excited about the amount of parents we had at the meeting. Vice Chair McClellan was at the meeting, and I don't have the attendance right in front of me, but we had well over a dozen families there, which was a really, yes, it was a really excellent number, and it was a nice amount. We talked about our, you know, vision of CPAC and our plan with our new co-presidents and our plan for the future and so on and so forth. And I did some presentations on about what this year has been. And one of the things that I said at that meeting was that my presentation here tonight, as a result of that meeting, was really going to be focused on MTSS. There were a lot of parent questions and confusion around MTSS. I was answering individual questions as they came. And then as I stepped back from the meeting and kind of looked at it with a larger lens, I was able to kind of look at it through that lens a little bit better and recognize some things, distill down some of what we can share through this meeting about MTSS. And what I want to say too is that what I show tonight on the screen is also going to be put up on my website under its own MTSS moniker, if you will, for people to click on and go to. I know that people had commented that they were looking for it in my special education process guide, because MTSS is a regular education and building-based
That's right.
program. It is not going to live in a special education process guide. Some of it does live on a larger website, but that's kind of difficult to find. And so it's going to have its own home labeled as such on my website.
It's an important distinction, and when Ms. Swanker talks about MTSS, really doing it from student service line.
Exactly, which is the larger lens and the title of my job. So I'm going to kind of share that presentation tonight. We're going to put it up on my website, as I said, but also we are going to readdress that because it came only as a question point in the CPAC meeting as the topic for the next CPAC meeting. And I reached out to the principals, being the building-based people who run the MTSS teams, to be able to join us in that meeting and also talk about some of the finer details of MTSS in the buildings and answer some questions and so on and so forth, to which they have been very receptive.
Mr. Walker, could you explain what MTSS is, the acronym?
I'm going to, as we go forward.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. McCall, I appreciate it. Okay, so here we go. So MTSS is a multi-tiered system of supports. Now, I have to say, and I may have been part of some of the confusion where the questions arose at CPAC, that MTSS is a very large, overarching umbrella of the way we support all of our students in their education. There has also been, over the last 2 years, an MTSS task force that I have been chairing that really has been looking very specifically at the MTSS team. MTSS is not just the team, however, and it's important to make that distinction because there is a difference between the way we look at and support all of our students and students who may in fact come to the MTSS team. And we'll talk a little bit about this. So, if we could define MTSS, it is a framework designed to meet the needs of all students, and that is really important. And MTSS, really, all students are eligible and considered to be Tier 1 students who can receive those basic interventions that all students are entitled to and able to receive through general education. What MTSS does is it makes sure that schools use data-driven decision-making, use progress monitoring, and use evidence-based supports and strategies to sustain student growth. Now, within this overarching framework, there exists an MTSS team, and this team provides support for students who may require more strategies, and in order to make that effective progress, may be referred to this team for some discussion about what would be the best way to help this particular student as this student moves forward. This is why all families get the general MTSS letter that comes out of my office in September. And then from there forward, those individual letters, if and when students are brought to the team, comes from a building-based level. What is very important is MTSS is not just about those tiered interventions, but how all the systems in the school and in the district fit together so that all students can achieve that high-quality education in a way that they can access and learn. So, all students receive challenging, grade-appropriate Tier 1 instruction and have equitable access to high-quality, universally designed academic, behavioral, and social-emotional curriculum and instruction. And that is important because our old RTI model really focused only on the academic. And through the MTSS model, we're able to be much more all-encompassing and look at students through a much broader lens. And this instruction integrates everything that we are really focused on in this district, especially with our strategic plan and our learning walks. We're looking at culturally sustaining pedagogy. We're looking at linguistically responsive teaching and all of those things. This is a really nice diagram that shows you all of the areas of MTSS and kind of how they fit together and where they belong. That there is a universal design for learning, there's equitable access, that it it addresses both the academic, the behavioral, and the social or emotional levels for students, and that there are universal supports, there are some targeted supports, and then there can be some more intensive supports as needed. Any and all students should have access to supports when they need them. In addition to this, obtaining services at one point in time does not mean that students will always need that level of support. The MTSS process is not always linear, but it's really oriented around problem solving. And it is a process, and it's really important that while it provides some information and helps in the organization of supports, as well as the communication with families to be able to refer to the tiers, a student isn't defined by a tier. And it looks very different when we look at students individually, and it is looked at as a whole process that is not, as it says, just kind of a linear process. So within this that I'm going to be putting on my website, you could see this one talks about the universal design for learning and what that framework means, that there are multiple means of engagement, the whys of learning. There are multiple means of representation, the whats of learning, and multiple means of action and expression, the hows of learning, that students can be reached and can also show what they are learning through. And these pages that look like this come right out of the Massachusetts MTSS model that is on the DESE website. This page, I'm not going to read to you, but talks a lot about the equitable access and how we really meet the needs of all students, and that MTSS is really designed for all students. And that we recognize that students are general education students first, and we recognize that diversity and inclusion as an integral part of the classroom, and that we have very strong tier 1 systems and supports that supplement what is going on in the classroom as natural for everyone, but also can be supplemented with additional tiers of support as needed. This particular page really breaks down the tiered supports, which is nice. It explains the different tiers and how they are fluid, how they are not necessarily linear, how students can have access to them, how children are not really labeled by their tiers, but the supports they are receiving in specific skill or content areas may receive in a particular, may kind of be designated as from a particular tier, but that we are really cognizant and careful of that as well. A little further definition of the tiers, tier 1 being for all students, tier 2 supports being in addition to the tier 1s, generally done in small groups and with some additional opportunities to practice the skills necessary, mostly within the general education classroom, sometimes in a smaller group. And then tier 3, more intensive explicit supports, very focused interventions, individually or very small group, and at every level, progress monitored, communication happening, and then some decision-making around where we need to go next with students. So that is going to be, I need to stop my share. That is going to be placed up on the Student Services webpage. It is where it belongs. It is, I think, going to be more defined and easier to access than looking for it just on our general website. And there for all parents and all of us to look at. And as I said, this is going to be followed up in the April CPAC meeting with some of the principals joining us and talking specifically about this a little bit further, particularly in terms of, what is kind of an MTSS intervention? How do we communicate with parents? What might be a tier 1 intervention that really doesn't reach the
Right.
level of MTSS, so on and so forth. So I hope that this is going to be clarifying and answering some of those questions, and I look for the future dialogue about it in our next CPAC meeting.
That'd be lovely to have to advertise that so that people can really see the investment of the district in this. That we're listening, that we want to continue to grow, we're growing with it. And that it's happening across the district. It's not just one building doing it. We're trying to have really uniform, might not be the right word, but consistent
Yes.
processes. And we're not trying to have unique scenarios.
Absolutely. And that really is and has been the focus of the subcommittee work. Not MTSS as a global element itself, because that has been going on, with our schools since well before this work, but to really look at that vertical alignment, honor the different levels and what is needed there, but and enable them to do business the way they should be, but also create that alignment so that it goes grade to grade, school to school, information is shared, so on and so forth.
Do you have a couple questions?
All right, let's hear it.
Okay, so I believe the first one is from Melissa McDonough. Actually, they came in at like exact same time, but Melissa McDonough from 306 Fair Oaks Lane. And Ms. McDonough says there was a discussion of building-based interventions not being MTSS at the CPAC meeting. Are those now being considered MTSS, or are there other non-MTSS interventions not being discussed here?
So again, MTSS is really the framework that guides the way we support all students. Are there interventions that may take place that may not reach the MTSS team or may not reach a certain tiered level? Yes, there are.
Because we're always trying to help kids.
Because we're always trying to help students. And it will fall under MTSS because that is the way we do our business. It may not fall under the MTSS team, and the principals are going to be able to speak to some of that in our April meeting and also talk about, communication around those supports and so on and so forth.
I think possibly, and I don't want to speak for Ms. McDonough or anybody, but the idea of regular help being provided to a student that isn't being communicated home could be a concern. So do you want to address that in any way?
Just that when I reached out to the principals after our CPAC meeting, and I said, here's what I am hearing, and here's what we would like to do next month. And, can you give me any feedback on that? What I can say is that they're all about family communication and family engagement. And our MTSS letters have really helped a lot with that. They also are using, outreach around some of these interventions. They are recognizing that that is something that they want to get better at, not just through the MTSS team letters, but also these outside of the team interventions and communicating that to families. They believe that that is going on. They also believe that there probably are some places where, maybe there was a misstep or a miscommunication that happened. So that is something that we are highlighting for them, and we're going to continue working on developing
But
that.
our overarching goal is to communicate when a child is getting support.
Yes, so that,
Be it from the MTSS system or from just a regular thing that's happening in the classroom, which obviously should be noted and communicated.
right, whether it be from the MTSS team or from a typical
MTSS team,
universal
sorry.
MTSS support.
Correct. as a
Yes.
team.
Yes.
Great. Do we have another question from?
Before we go, I'll
yes.
just follow up on that. Several months ago, we discussed some of this, and there was a question about parent notification and whether or not, at what point, parents were notified that additional interventions. And there was some ambiguity about whether it was happening and whether it was happening consistently. I just wanted to follow up on that and see if that's been, are we 100% on parent notifications when interventions are being applied? And do we have a clear delineation of, obviously you don't get a parent notification just because the teacher re-explains the project.
Right.
But, do we have a clear delineation of when that parent notification should go?
So what we have in place is there is a September MTSS Tier 1 letter that goes out from me that explains the whole multi-tiered system of supports and Tier 1 and the DCAP to all families. As students come to the MTSS teams, all of the levels are using the Tier 2 and the Tier 3 intervention letters to share out with families as students receive interventions through the team. And if there are interventions outside of the team that maybe they don't reach the level of the team, but it's an intervention that the teacher thinks that, the family should know about, those kind of communications are going on.
Yeah.
And they, will continue to go on, and people are paying more attention to making sure that that communication is taking
And that could
place.
be reading support, math specialist support, that all falls under the umbrella of MTSS. Not just, so, and that's outside of when a student goes to the team. Because that means that the reading or math supports that they may have been getting with the specialists are making effective progress. And so that part of it, they get letters from those specialists saying, I'm going to be working with your child over.
So
But
we
it
have- so
wouldn't
we
say
have-
MTSS, it may not say MTSS.
We have
That-
delineated that and you've allowed us to provide more supportive staffing. And
Yes,
with that, we are providing a lot more support every day as part of what this is what we do. We people who are there to re-explain to kids, people who are there to reassert something that's happening. But I think we're much better now than we have been, and we're moving towards, getting even better at this as we move into MTSS, more practice, of providing, that communication.
I do wonder, if Ms. McDonough is referring, the other day at Deer Hill School Council, Mrs. Principal Sullivan was talking about basically kind of a side effect of the success of the kind of re-engineering and reworking of the MTSS process is that now that we have programs in place and we have bridges with very clear checkpoints, and I think that most of us as parents appreciate, the cover letters that come home on our assessments that say if they're progressing or meeting or whatever. The specialists, because we have beefed up the presence of specialists, are able to be more actively involved in that discussion of how these checkpoints are going in ELA and science and math and social studies. And as they're looking at grade level assessments, can say, okay, it's very clear that, 80% of the grade met expectations and we can move on to the next unit. However, there's still kids who didn't meet it, and now we need to do a few responsive lessons in small groups within the classroom, which is very much a part of Tier 1 instruction.
it is.
And not necessarily for a full intervention cycle, like we might
Right.
get a non-Tier 2 intervention that lasts 6 to 8 weeks. So these are just a number of responsive lessons that are happening in a small group setting
that are very
that are
targeted.
very targeted in response to these checkpoints along the way.
Yeah.
So are we hearing at home, oh, I worked with Miss Thornay today in class? Sometimes, yeah. And when that's gonna be a longer term intervention, that's a letter, but sometimes it's just
Correct.
like, okay, it's very clear that Lydia is not grasping multiplying fractions and really needs to double dip in that, have a conversation, because we're not comfortable moving on to the next unit without her having that understanding. So I think that's actually a really good example of how well principals are working with specialists to use our resources and spread them far and wide. But we did clarify earlier in the year that if children are going to be involved in some sort of intervention cycle and being progress monitored and being pulled out for any sort of regular time, that needs communication. And we're ensuring that
And-
that's
and I
happening.
think-
So it is, I mean, now we're getting into kind of this micro levels.
Yes. And I think you're addressing this point by
Yep.
Ms. McDonough. She continues and says this is incredibly difficult to follow for what is MTSS and what is not. Hopefully we've kind of put that out. There is no discussion of these non-MTSS interventions in any of the district of building guides. Based on reading the guides, it would seem that all interventions are tracked under the guidelines of MTSS, excuse me. When this is not the case, how should parents monitor if their children are making progress when this outside of the MTSS system?
So it's all within the MTSS system
Yeah,
because that's
right.
teaching and we're just changing the language and
That's
when. And I totally get what you're saying, Ms. McDonough, because now there's, it used to be called RTI and before it would, and then we say differentiation and there's so much language surrounding this. But every single child at school is getting tier 1 instruction. And within tier 1 instruction, sometimes, well, it should be actually all the time, people are being seen in small groups. Is it because you're at level? Do you need a little extra help? Are you needing a little extension? We're trying to differentiate, that's best practice. So when that becomes a longer
That's
term intervention period, that's when we start, and by we, I mean the district offices
Yes,
Monday.
yeah.
Communicating with an email, with a letter. And then if something happens where we're moving up a tier,
Yes.
and that is when the team has
Correct.
identified, we need to have more than what is happening at tier 1. A lot's happening at tier 1.
More
a
intensely.
lot. So it is confusing.
So, and then she gave us an example, which I think is in relation to what you just said. As an example, this is Mrs. McDonough again. A reading intervention specialist working with your child that is MTSS tier 2, or is this other specialist working with children?
Which I think you
Yep.
should answer.
I hope so.
Again, she says, as an example, a reading intervention specialist working with your child that is MTSS tier 2, or this other specialist working with children. So I guess she's trying to say that maybe sometimes these, it's a failure.
know,
of
it's
the
hard
word.
to-
Maybe I can test to see if I understand it. And what I'm hearing is that everything is tier 1. That's your baseline.
Everyone gets.
So everyone gets,
Everyone
That's your
gets.
core instruction.
Everyone gets core instruction, so core instruction is tier 1, and core instruction may be, you may require, walking over and saying, hey, you're having a hard time with this problem, and I'm gonna help you. And so there may be variations, and that may change over time, but that's just teaching.
Yes.
And it's at a certain point, and this may be getting to my delineation point, at a certain point, realize more than tier 1 is required. We need whatever reason, maybe there's reasons. And that's where it sounds like the MTSS level 2 comes in. And in order to cross that bridge from level 1 to level 2, that's when the MTSS team gets involved. And a plan is made. And at that point, we would do a communication to parents.
Absolutely.
So
But
can I
the
make-
confusion is,
There's one more
And there's one
component,
more.
there's one more component, just to,
Yep.
I just want to clarify. There's also a tier 2 intervention that doesn't necessarily meet the level to go to the MTSS team. That could be, we take our data in the beginning of the year, we look at our math data and we see that there's a group of students that aren't making benchmark. And so at that point in time, we may take those students, they will still be notified, they'll get a letter from the reading specialist or the math specialist, whoever they're going to be working with. They'll get notification that they are in fact going to work with that reading and math specialist. It has not moved to MTSS yet. It is still tier 2 intervention, which
So
is
it
a little
hasn't gone to the
confusing.
team,
Correct.
but it is an MTSS tier 2 intervention.
It's
It
a
just
tier
is
2
not-
intervention,
It has not gone processed through the MTSS team,
correct, not yet,
but
right.
And there's a
It may or may
communication, and there's a
not,
communication.
there's
parents
a
will still be let know.
communication.
So,
Because they're being pulled out and they're working with a math.
so it's just
specialist.
that decision point to do MTSS level 2 is changed because you're using a different data source, which is more of you're identifying a group from, at the
Right.
beginning here.
Because we want to capture students, right? We want to capture and intervene where,
And then your timing and tracking.
correct,
So
correct.
this comes up a lot. and It is very confusing. And I'm wondering if it would be helpful if we could create, and maybe these materials will help out because they're going to be posted on their website, but we might want to think about a chart. And I think the one that I saw there was the little castle. I think that's helpful.
Yeah.
And so maybe people can digest these materials, but we may need to try and help digest that a little bit more if we continue to get feedback. But Ms.
And I-
McDonough, I share your thoughts that this is very confusing. And, we do want to make sure that it's clear. So thank you for your continued questions.
And I do think that having the principals be able to speak to those building-based supports
Sure.
that may not rise to the MTSS team, they may be as Mrs. St. Ange was saying, some of those very short-term targeted, skill-specific, quick little interventions, or they might come out of a result of some testing that we're kind of concerned about, and we want to pull a group and then put them back in, can clarify some of that.
We did have an additional question that actually came in at the exact same time that Ms. McDonough wrote the question, so I think it has some similarity in nature. So it's building on that. It says, this is from Emma Erickson Broomhead of 280 Fair Oaks Lane. And Ms. Broomhead said, "Thank you, Mrs. Sawanka, for the insightful presentation tonight. To clarify and follow up on Thursday's CPAC meeting, is MTSS the only intervention program in the school buildings?"
So it's not an intervention program. I think that's where it gets confusing. It's actually.
No, go ahead, please go.
MTSS, that multi-tiered system of support, is the framework for which we make sure that all students get what they need. So it's not an intervention program such as if you were to pick up a program and say, okay, this is math, this child is struggling in phonics, we're going to use Foundations or IXL or whatever that is, whatever that intervention program, it's not a package or anything like that. MTSS is the umbrella or the structure for which which all of it occurs.
So there are lots of interventions. Whether to use them comes out of the MTSS framework, but MTSS itself is not an intervention.
But I read the question as a very similar question to Ms. McDonough's in that other, I think, you're right.
Yeah.
By pointing out
But I
the
read
words,
different, yeah.
but I'm thinking that she probably knows that, and that she's saying that are there other things going on that aren't under the umbrella of MTSS, which is that I think we just talked about. And forgive me if I'm wrong in my interpretation, but what everything Dr. Scott said was accurate, but.
Everything is under MTSS.
Yes.
I think it's also important to realize that all of these grown-ups who are coming in and out of these rooms play multiple roles, as was pointed out tonight, right? Like, you're collaborating with each other, you're helping a whole team. If I come in to sit with Leslie because she's on a special ed plan and the child next to her is not understanding what's going on, I'm also gonna help clarify some things for her neighbor. So as grown-ups in the room, we're trying to support all students. Some have official documentation that says we need to do that and this is how we're gonna do it. Some in that moment are not getting it and are still gonna get support. And maybe that's that one little, and they're like, oh, got it. Now I can continue on and do my math. So a lot of these grownups are not just playing one role.
That's right.
And when they're passing through, especially in a push-in model, meaning they're coming into the classroom and not taking kids out, you're not ignoring the 20 other kids who are in the room. So I think that's also important to acknowledge that that's a good thing. And it also is confusing because it's not a very clear delineation. And when we're thinking about regularity, how frequently that's happening, that's when the documentation part
Right.
needs to happen.
And that's when it
Because we
really
do
does.
need to know, it is important.
Yes, and that's when it really does need to happen, and we need to track, and we need to keep a record, and we need to let the following grade and the following school know those things when it's about.
Are there any other questions for the committee? From the committee? Strong, anything else?
No, that ends my presentation.
It sounded like we were coming to a close, so I know that we still got other agenda items, so make sure we move forward. So thank you very much, Ms. Wonka. We'll move on to our next section, agenda item F, budget resources and governance. And we have a few agenda items here that require a vote. First, disposal of surplus materials for the Deerfield School. Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Patrick Sullivan.
Yes, thank you. This is basically destroying some reading textbooks, teacher manuals, very old materials that are not in use at this time. And there are 199 of them. Yeah, and then there's some more here. Scott Forsman, there's 462 and teacher. We saw the room that today that this was filled with these books that are not being used. And now it's a very serviceable storage area. As we move these books in preparation for the anticipation of being accepted. Reading Street as we're changing our program.
So
It
that's what all of
serviced the
these are
district
all
for quite some time. And we really don't,
It's outdated,
Yeah.
it's not even supported by the company.
and you can see the amounts here. There's quite a few.
There's some old science, very, very old.
Can I ask a tactic question? How does one dispose of?
Yeah, they,
Heard it, right? Or they-
no, they just get taken to the.
Recycle.
To the recycling.
Yeah.
The issue is that, we want to, we're always very careful to make sure that it's class of public schools on it, because people will get
Sure.
confused. And we want to make sure that we can trace anything that is disposed
So you keep
back.
good records about that.
Correct.
Great, great. That's right, all of that.
Yeah.
Any other questions from the committee? So we do have a request for a vote here, so I'd entertain a motion. That Mr. Pell will be making. But a motion to appropriately dispose of the surplus materials as described in the meeting.
So
So moved and seconded by Mr. Kearney. All in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. So Dr. Sullivan, please feel free to dispose of these materials as directed by the committee.
We did have one follow-up to our last agenda item that I didn't see. Is it appropriate for me to read it?
This is going back to student services. Yeah, if it is germane, we can bring that back up.
Yeah, it was germane to what we were talking about. I think I'll be glad to read it. It's, again, by Emma Erickson Broomhead from 280 Fair Oaks Lane. Ms. Broomhead says, "Thank you, Mrs. Sawanka, for this insightful presentation tonight. I respectfully ask you to consider providing more detail on the student service section of the school committee meeting agenda beyond routine updates to give families an understanding of any special topics that you'll be covering.
Oh, that's a good idea.
The scope of student services is very broad, and this will allow families to engage in particular areas of interest and relevance to them." So this is, I think, a reference to the TSS not being necessarily,
Yeah, so people can anticipate and tune in.
Just add a bullet
Here.
or two. Yeah, under yours, just add a bullet as
Yes.
to what you're gonna talk about.
Exactly.
Yes,
yep,
Great
good idea.
plans.
fair
I
point.
like that.
It's a really good idea.
Thank you very much for the suggestion. Again, this committee is a committee of action. I love it. Problem, solution, this is great.
We could do that.
So our next agenda item is also requesting a vote. This is a vote on the MSBA submission for the Cohasset High School and the Cohasset Middle School. As the committee knows, we have been engaging with the School Facilities Committee for over a year to look at our facilities here. And the Facilities Committee has done that. There's been an overarching study. And for a number of reasons, we last year approved the submission to the MSBA of a statement of interest in order to participate in their program. High level, the MSBA program is a program run by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts that allows for districts to benefit from the expertise and potential funding from the Commonwealth. And participation in the program allows for potentially construction of new buildings and ideas and offsetting of expenses. So there's a timetable for participation and requiring a statement of interest. We did this last year. We were not selected to participate in the program, not through any fault of the district, but the program is very popular. And so our needs did not rank to the top of the needs of those who would apply. But the request here is for this committee to approve the resubmission of a statement of interest for participation in the MSBA program for this coming year. It is a specific worded resolution, which I'll read out, but before I, in the form of request, but before I do that, I wanted to see if there's any discussion at the committee level about the statement of interest or the request for a resolution. Okay, I was hoping to have more time not to read this, but
I'll put it up on
If you
the,
need, I can just tell you that we, as you mentioned, we had already done this before last year, so it's the same form of vote.
Mhm.
And the MSBA has informed us that we can essentially resubmit the SOI, so for time based on, with the same general information.
Yep.
We do need to submit two separate SOIs, one for Cohasset Middle School, one for Cohasset High School, even though they fall within the same physical building. That was a little item of confusion that we actually followed their guidance. The first time around, the guidance we received was that we can submit one for both, but then when they
Just to go
came-
on the record also, Vice Chairman Collin, that was not the reason, and it was stated to us by them, it was not the reason that our application was denied.
No, it had nothing to do with it.
Yes, it
It was actually stated at the senior study that they preferred having the two different
Yeah.
SOIs. That was the first time it was related to us that was what they wanted. In fact, the direct opposite was expressed to us prior to our submission of the SOI, which is why we submitted it that way, because we had never done it, so we were following their explicit instructions to a T. I recently attended a meeting of the Capital Budget Committee presenting a concept related to this, and the chairperson of that committee, Brian Hosted, indicated that he wasn't surprised that our application had been denied because we had not submitted the statement of interest correctly. That is inaccurate. That's not an accurate representation. So I just wanted to clarify that. That had nothing to do with why our application was not submitted. It was accepted. It was the reasons that you state, Mr. Dial, that it's compared to other districts within the pool of applicants, and the MSBA, of course, has all kinds of selection criteria. And it is also not a commentary on whether or not we need a new building or not. They came to conduct a senior study in Cohasset, which by all accounts would indicate that there's an acknowledgement that, there is something that needs to be done here, just like the existing condition study indicates. So did want to clarify that, and we are basically resubmitting this to try again for the second year. Districts often have to apply more than once, more than twice, sometimes more than 3 times or 4 times. So we're doing this for the second time this year. It'll be essentially the same statement of interest. I'm meeting with Dr. Sullivan at the end of the week on Friday to refine this and just, swear everything away. After our vote, the select board will also have to vote on whether or not we submit the SOI.
Same format.
And it'll be the same format of the vote, and I anticipate that they will be in support of that, just as they were last year, but we will see. So that is just an additional supplementary sort of summary.
That's great. So and this is fantastic, Dr. Sullivan, thank you for putting this on the board. So I'm not going to read the resolution since it is there in front of the board, but the request would be for 2 resolutions of the school committee. The first resolution will relate to the Cohasset Middle School. The second resolution will relate to the Cohasset High School. And both of those, the information that is not there that I will fill in for you right now is the reasons. And the reasons, there are several. The reasons we will include in our statement of interest for participation in the SBA program are for elimination of existing or severe overcrowding, replacement, renovation, or modernization of school facility systems such as roofs, windows, boilers, heating and ventilation systems to increase energy conservation and decrease energy-related costs in a school facility, and replacement or addition to obsolete buildings in order to provide for a full range of programs consistent with state and approved local requirements. So those will be the reasons stated in the statement of interest, and that is the resolution. So with that background, and if there are no questions, I'd request a resolution for this as displayed on the screen relating to the Cohasset Middle School.
Mr. Chairman, out of an abundance of caution, I am going to make the motion, but I am going to read, subject to the specific reasons you just stated, inserting those in. I'm going to read this language into the record because I suspect that MSB may require it. And this is done out of an abundance of caution. I don't know, but we're just going to do this because I think that this is why they provide this. I appreciate your effort to avoid this because it is confusing, but I would move that the Cohasset School Committee, having convened in open meeting on March 15, 2023, prior to our submission of an SOI, the Cohasset School Committee of Cohasset, Massachusetts, in accordance with the charter, bylaws, and ordinances, has voted to authorize the superintendent to submit to the Massachusetts School Building Authority the statement of interest form dated, which will be submitted. We have not submitted yet. It'll be submitted in either March or April 2023.
It has to be submitted prior to April 14th.
So the SOI dated prior to April 14, 2023. It'll be March or April 2023. It'll be this year's for the Cohasset Middle School and a separate one for the Cohasset High School, both of which are located in the same physical structure at 143 Pond Street in Cohasset, Massachusetts. And the SOI describes and explains the following deficiencies in the priority categories for which an application may be submitted to the Massachusetts School Building Authority in the future. And those are the precise items that you just listed, Mr. Chairman. And the school committee hereby further specifically acknowledges that by submitting the statement of interest form, the Massachusetts School Building Authority in no way guarantees the acceptance or the approval of an application, the awarding of a grant, or any other funding commitment from the Massachusetts School Building Authority, or commits the town of Cohasset to filing an application for funding with the Massachusetts School Building Authority. So that's my motion.
That is the motion for the Cohasset Middle School.
Cohasset Middle School first, yes.
Yes.
Second,
We have a second on the motion, and we'll do roll call.
just one matter of discussion. I'll work with Kathy Bach to make sure we have the right language in the minutes.
Yeah, I was gonna come to that in just a moment.
Okay, great. So,
So Mr. Kearney, Mr. Carr,
aye.
Ms. St. Ange.
Aye.
Mr. McCollum.
Aye.
Mr. Dial, aye. The motion to submit the MSBA statement of interest in accordance with the specific language required by the MSBA has been approved. So I will now ask for a mirror motion for the Cohasset High School.
So moved. The same exact language.
Do I have a second?
Second,
We'll again do roll call. Mr. Kearney.
aye.
Mr. Carr.
Aye.
Ms. St. Ange.
Aye.
Mr. McCollum.
Aye.
And Mr. Dial, aye. The motion unanimously carries. Superintendent, you are free to submit the statement of interest. Mr. Carr, having heard this discussion and the intent of the committee to match the actual language of the required, could you please ensure that the minutes do reflect the language as supplemented herein? And we'll take that as read in the meeting.
Okay, very well.
And I can send you this copy.
Thank you.
So you can get the word.
Yes.
Extra 30 seconds.
I'll make sure we get that done.
Thank you very much. So we have, again, done so much in our meeting. Ms. Owen, I now turn the floor over to you for our budget and finance update.
Thank you. Am I sharing? or you
Yeah, let me give you the power.
Yeah. Got it.
You're not on mute. It hasn't caused a problem, but just so you know.
Yeah, well, let me,
It's okay. It hasn't been a problem.
because I have my bond shop.
Okay. Just didn't want that echo that gives me a nervous breakdown every time I hear it.
Usually I cause that for you, I'm so sorry.
No, it's me. It's my own issues.
Okay, I will be brief. There's not a lot, there's not a lot that's changed, not a lot, there's nothing yet concerned, so this is the FY 23 February finance report. As of February 28th, 2023, school department has expended $12,212,882 out of our $22 million budget, which is about 59.67% of our budget, and we are 67% through our school year. So we are again holding our own at being ahead of the game and under budget right now. We've encumbered all the supplies materials that we know of on purchase orders, the amount of $1,121,261. And there's a remaining balance of about $9 million, which will continue to be expended for any unaccounted for unanticipated supplies materials or salaries that may come about. There are no concerns in SPED, the special education. Our SPED tuitions are holding its own at a deficit of $67,541. No change from the prior months, which is good, I think. There's a breakdown here of the 4 schools, what their budget amounts were, what they've expended to date, and their balances. Again, as I said, we're 67% through the school year, and as you can see, Osgood's 54.39, Deer Hill is 52.75, middle school is 51.92, and high school is 59.12. So all areas are still under budget.
which is good. We'll still be following that closely as we're in the last few months, believe it or not. Circuit breaker has not changed, so we received $700,850,000, which we are using. We received that in FY '22, which is what we will use in this current year, up to 75% reimbursement rate. Next year, or I should say, this year, we're receiving $1,170,609, which will be rolled over and used for our FY '24 budget. So that was a significant increase of about $468,753. So there's been no change to circuit breaker. Again, nothing's changed. Our capital outlay for FY '23, all projects have been completed. The capital funding that was requested for FY '24 is $1,312,398. We have yet to hear what will be allotted to us. I know capital had a meeting Monday night. I don't know if they actually voted anything or if we were even on the agenda for discussion. So, TBD. I know when we met with them, they were, we looked through like the first 6 or 7 items, and we have not, been back to the table to discuss anything further, so. But those are all our asks. There's a list here of our grants, as you can see, as the year's winding down, our remaining balances are winding down as well. So it's about $420,691 remaining. That will be spent between now and June 30th from our grants. I believe we had 2 adjustments that were not recognized here. Very small, or actually probably 4 adjustments. One to the Title I grant and one to the Title II grant, in the amounts of like $67. $182. Very limited. And the same with the special education 240 grant and the 262 grant were totaling $1,600 across the 2 of them.
The work to put it in, costs more.
Correct. Yes, it is.
Seriously, it's interesting.
And then revolving accounts, again, you can see our balances here are also being reduced as the year continues on.
Ms. Owen, just in the interest of time, seeing where we are, what I might do is just see if these materials were included in the committee materials. Just if there are any key items you want to highlight as material, or if there are any questions from the committee, but absent that, I might accelerate the.
We will accelerate. In the revolving funds, the school use of facilities is still running deficit. We're collecting fees. As of July 1, the new rates will go into effect. So hopefully we'll start to see that account come out of the deficit. I'm going to just scroll through this, give you a list of FTEs and how they're broken down, as well as building FTEs and how each building is broken down. Here's a list of our summary of electric and gas, no areas of concern. List of FTEs for grants and revolving. I've added a slide here of enrollment as of March 1st. Each month, it will obviously, enrollment changes, so each month I'll put a button in the first one, just so we can kind of see the trends. And things that have changed. So Oscar over the break, the carpet in the library on the stairs was in disarray, and it has been replaced. It looks great. We went in there today and took a look at it.
Very nice.
The lighting upgrade has been completed at Deer Hill, and as we heard earlier, that the lighting upgrade at the Middle High School is ongoing. So
Maybe too bright.
it's maybe
So
too bright.
So that may be the
So we
case
should
for the
ask
elementary
Jared
schools
Hill,
too.
We're gonna, we'll inquire.
And I haven't heard anything about the elementary.
But that doesn't mean there's nothing wrong.
No, it doesn't. We haven't heard anything. We didn't hear anything about this. We'll look
We'll
into it.
ask,
Yeah, I mean,
we'll ask.
every time I get new light bulbs, they annoy me, so ask.
Food service, no changes, other than the signage is now up, which is great.
Looks great too, by the way.
It does look great.
And we received the quotes today, actually, on the upper and lower senior lobbies and getting the high top tables and making it more of a lounge type look to it.
It's gonna be
We
great.
just haven't gone through all the diagrams because they were pretty intense. Transportation, I don't believe there's been any change to transportation, knock on wood, things have been very quiet. I did receive an email from First Student that they are getting us the information to install the GPSs on our 2 buses with First Student, so
So the movement is,
that
yes.
should be,
it's just, but it's still in there.
it should be happening in the next week or 2.
We've
Hopeful.
lost a little control over the timeline with it, but we've made movement.
Okay, but good job on that, because there's no more emails coming out about, oh, the kids are gonna be 15 minutes late here, 10 minutes early here. I mean, Dr. Sullivan, your team and so on, you guys did a good job. I mean, that was stressful.
But I was hoping it had a more, like, it's in, or it's going to be in tomorrow, or.
Sure, but I mean, first things first, get the kids to school without problem, and we figured out a solution.
I know.
That was getting tough, and it was very stressful on you,
And
and the parents.
and
Families.
again, that's great. We're now there, and we've got there, able to work through the things. So thank you for persevering on that. But this does illustrate one of the things that we talked about last year, and considering using a vendor is we have less control. So this is a live illustration. It's not a material thing, but
That's very true.
it's a point where we,
You do lose control over things, like as we have here.
Right.
Because they're not your own.
so.
Right.
Even though when we lease buses, there's a little bit of lack of control because we're leasing them, but it's much more control.
Yes.
We have much more control in house.
Yes.
The only other thing that I'd like to mention is the turf. We are about a week away from it being completed. I know they worked a lot on it last
Yep.
week, and I believe all the gluing and inlay is done.
And we're a week away from the start of the season, so
We're a week away from the start of the spring season, so
practice.
we're hitting up our mark.
It's gonna be great.
So
So just a little bit of work, I would say.
just, so no concerns with the budget. Again, we're behind, I should say, ahead of the game with the budget, because we're all coming in below where we should be. I'm gonna stop sharing, because I have one other picture that, let's see. This is
The
a great
signage.
picture, but
Fancy.
you can see the signage here, it has specials, deli, entree, and then over here, there's a sandwich sign, and then there's the fresh salads. And then on either side of the additional room, there's a sign up door here that says the Skipper Snack Shack. So it looks really nice.
Awesome.
All right, let's move on to the next agenda item, which is preschool.
So you're usurping my
I did
role.
have a comment.
I'm on a roll.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the next
There we
agenda.
go.
He likes
I
moving.
just, I do have a comment.
All right,
Oh.
sure.
Okay.
Oh, before we go on, Mr. Kearney, yeah.
Yeah, I just do want to recognize that those revolving accounts, I still want to be able to get them to subcommittee and tell you what those funds are being used for. I know we've been working on that.
Yeah.
Maybe we can set up a committee meeting to be able to, yes,
Let's go through it.
just on the revolving account.
Absolutely.
Let's do it.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Kearney, Ms. Owen. I believe we're going to preschool fees.
We're going to preschool fees. We're moving right along. We met as a subgroup this week. We talked about this, so it's, we talked about it at the last week meeting just tentatively. The recommendation is that we definitely need to increase our preschool tuition. It is not self-funded. It's not even 50% self-funded.
So the idea is Chairman, we'll vote on this potentially next time.
So just to give, you can see what the program costs currently, we're charging $20 in their half days. The other public schools that are also half days, you can see Weymouth is at $34.85, Millville's at $3,330, then Duxbury, Kingston, Hingham, Marshfield, and Situate. So we are almost at the bottom except for the Hingham and Marshfield.
And Ms. Owen, this is the same, has this
It's
actually
all
changed
set.
since? So-
It has
so-
not changed.
we need to go over it again. But is there a recommendation either from the administration or from a subcommittee as to the,
Both.
Yes.
so what's,
So the recommendation would be to increase the tuition from the $2,800 to the $3,200. And that would help support one of the classrooms. It would fully fund one of the classrooms.
okay, so before the committee, we're not voting on this at this
No,
point,
we
to
are
be
not.
clear. But before the committee is a recommendation, that comes from both the administration and our subcommittee
Yes,
on.
we agreed upon it in our last meeting this week.
Okay, so that comes from both the subcommittee and from the administration, is to increase preschool tuition to 3,200. We can see what that does. I would solicit public comment during the interim between this meeting and next meeting. This will come up for a vote at the next meeting. And the other thing that I'd be interested in, just as a committee member, Ms. Owen and Superintendent Sullivan, is if you've done the impact analysis on our community to see if there's any indication of people being unable to pay the increase. I would expect, given that it's a relatively modest increase, that we wouldn't find that, but I would want to just dot that I, cross that T if we can. And that may be a challenge, and if it is a challenge, then we may not ever know, but it's
By way of survey?
not necessarily a survey, but if you just have information, or if anybody comes to you through the, because of this meeting or because of public
Yes.
comment, I'd just be interested in any sort of information you may have on that.
Yes.
I also wonder, like, so when, for kindergarten, for example, when you get your green page that says how much kindergarten costs and you opt into your payment plan, or I guess pay up front the whole thing, but it's nothing I ever did, so. Maybe you offer another tier of a payment plan to break it down a little smaller, because people may need less assistance if they can do it in more small chunks. Instead of having to say, hey, can I come up with a different payment plan, just offer it.
Right.
That's a great idea, so I'd encourage the administration to think of that, so. Any other questions to the committee on the recommendations that will be voted upon next week? Okay. Hearing none, thank you for the update.
None heard, we'll be moving on to the budget.
we are-
Worksheet for FY 24.
So you're gonna find yourself being the chair pretty soon.
Be careful. You want me to move things along, we're moving.
I like your style. She's good at it.
It's like pulling.
So we are gonna go to
papers
the next
down.
agenda item, budget discussion and
No,
vote. So Ms. Owen, I'll turn it back to you.
okay. This is, let's see. We have several versions of the budget worksheet, so this version, excuse me. If I can make it bigger. Smaller. Okay.
That's good.
Nothing's changed in this area with the basic rollover cost, the circuit breaker. Under staffing and other requests, originally we had, as you can see here, we had asked for, it was two versions, $50,000 to help subsidize full day K, or $300,000 to make full day K free. And then we had $272,188 for additional supplies, materials, and curriculum in the music, arts, and math, K through 12. After speaking with town accountant, what they'd like to offer us is a revised version of this. So if you look at this worksheet, you can see here the 300,000 for full day K is out of the equation, and the 272 is out of the equation. And when I say out of the equation, it just in the numbers for what the budget is, the school committee is asking for the budget.
Doing it as a one-time cost.
So,
That's the important part. It's a one-time cost. It will roll over.
It's not in the budget, it will not be included in the budget for next
Currently,
year.
the town is in agreement. Yeah.
so what they've offered is they'll give us $300,000 in a one-time payment for full day kindergarten, which would make full day kindergarten free for next year.
Yep.
And then the following year, chapter 70 would pick up.
Because of the
Increase.
increase in the student.
And the same thing with the town will support us with one-time funding for the $272,188, which is supplies, materials, and curriculum. And supplies, materials as well. I believe that they went to the advisory and asked if they could pull this from through the opera funds, because our, I shouldn't say our increase, but our change or our increase or our adds to curriculum are definitely coming from the pandemic. In a big piece, so they could make the correlation to the opera funds. So those are the two things that have changed this worksheet. What they wanted to give us as a budget increase was 2.5, and if you see below, I communicated to them that we get down to 2.51%. And we made a deal. Basically, we were in agreement that they could fund us with a 2.51% increase.
But I will say, well, I think it's also important that we vote on the items, because it is very important that, and I'm not saying that we appreciate the collaboration with the town, but I, as a superintendent, feel it's important that we know what, as a committee, we're asking for in case something did happen down the line, and I'm not anticipating it will.
Correct.
We want to make sure we project our need.
Vote on the fine.
That's something you've always said.
Is this a vote for tonight or the next?
This is a vote for tonight on the budget.
So
So-
definitely vote on the 2.51% increase to the budget, in addition to the 300,000 in one-time funds for full day K and the 272 in one-time funds for supplies, materials, and curriculum.
Although I would add something, if we don't vote on the, like, I'm just putting it out there, I sort of feel like we should vote on the larger number. Because even though the town is going to reduce it like that, and if we don't, if something happened and they couldn't do those two items, we'd have the budget without those two items voted on, as opposed to if we vote on the larger number, this is just my thinking, we would have the totality of the budget voted on. But I think we certainly want to advocate for and appreciate what the town is proposing. I think it was important for the committee to see that.
So why don't I think that makes a lot of sense. So why don't I propose this? We'll have I'll ask for a resolution on the FY '24 final budget as proposed, with the 300,000 and 272 removed as line items from the budget, with the understanding that the town will be contributing one-time funding for that. And then we also approve in a second resolution, in the alternative, should that not occur, then the budget with those included as line items would be approved. Is that your?
Yes, but I just saw numbers moving, so I just want to make sure I understand.
Yeah, we do need to make sure we nail down which budget we're voting on.
Yeah.
We have one in our materials, we have now one on the
So-
screen. Looks like there's some revisions on that one on the screen.
I'm just trying to make them match. So what did change, so to speak, sorry, I reverted that. So the facilities and security coordinator, Dr. Sullivan and I spoke about it, and we lowered it from 15,000 to 10,000.
Yes.
And then the athletic trainer, it says add a point.
Because of use from the revolving fund.
Correct. So I talked to athletic director Rotundi, and he said he could fund the difference from the athletic revolving account, or he may be able to make it work with the $20,000. He really is not sure, because it's adding a second position, so he's not sure how much time he's actually going to need. So he could live within the means of the 20, and if not, he would find the remaining funds from his revolving account.
And then would that be sustainable, pulling from the revolving fund?
But what did he base that, because I didn't hear that, 0.25, or went down to a 0.25? I knew he was doing a revolving fund, but I didn't realize that was reducing position.
Athletic trainer.
Because it was a 0.5, wasn't it?
We want to add a 0.5, but only fund a 0.25.
Is that what we're
So
doing?
it's 0.25 to the school budget. The other 0.25 would come from athletic revolving.
Oh,
If
so it's not a
necessary.
0.25 trainer.
Correct.
Oh, thank you, okay. That's what I was understanding.
Correct.
Splitting.
So if we stuck with everything included in that number, the new budget number would be 23,477,609. Of that, 300,000 would be one-time funding, and 272.
Right.
188 would be one-time funding,
Which would bring down the the numbers.
which would make the percent.
But if we don't vote on
5.1.
the 5.07, then I feel like we're not voting on what we feel.
So you want a motion on this number now?
So, well, I was thinking backwards. I just want to understand. So we have the one with the town adjustment and so you put the other one on the,
Did you fix the numbers on that one though?
Yeah, that one was all set.
okay, so this budget on the screen is the budget with the understanding that the town will grant us one-time funding for full-day kindergarten.
If you scroll down fully, Susan, you can see there you go.
Okay.
Okay. And from a budget perspective, setting aside town process, if we're approving a budget, where does the $300,000 and the $272,000 that is offline item, where does that sit as far as,
Where does it come from?
because well, that comes from the town. But if we're not approving that as part of our budget, then how are we spending it? Do you see what I mean?
So when I spoke to the town accountant, what they're going to do is put it in a separate revolving fund. 300,000 in one and 272 in another, so it would be outside the LEA of the school budget, and it would be in a separate special fund that we would then expend from,
Okay,
Run by the town.
run by the school.
so it's not part of our budget,
Correct.
It's the development of a revolving fund.
but it's
Correct.
part of our, but we are getting.
They are giving us the funding.
So it's an unbudgeted expense that we're budgeting.
I know they did this, I think the year before I came, when there was one-time funding for, I think, textbooks. I'm not sure how they did that. I think they called it.
It was for the bridges.
I think they call it a capital item.
Yeah, so.
So my whole point is, I just want to make sure we know.
Yes, no, I think we're gonna get there. I just want to make sure we understand what we're.
So it seems we want to vote the 23 number, so we have it.
Well, I think we vote the 22.9 first as our
First.
primary budget,
Yeah,
and then do an alternative vote for should the
this not work out?
one
There
day
you go.
payments not
Yeah,
work
yeah,
out.
yeah, that's
then we approve.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so we have a plan A and a plan B.
That's exactly what I was.
So,
So do you want a motion on this?
yes, and just to be clear what the motion is, let's see if we want to do it this way. We approve the budget as presented, the 2.51% as presented to the committee. But in the alternative, should the one-time payments as discussed herein not occur, then we approve the 5.07 budget as an alternative budget. So does everyone understand the resolution?
Yes, and I make a motion to that effect.
Okay, the motion is made by Mr. McClellan. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Carr. We'll do roll call, Mr. Kearney. Aye. Mr. Carr,
Car, aye.
Ms. St. Ange,
Aye.
Ms. McClellan. Aye. Mr. Fowler, aye. So the budget is approved at 2.51 with an alternative budget approved should the payments not happen. I do want to mark the occasion that this is a accomplishment of the school committee that we have provided our child with free kindergarten.
Hopefully.
Trying.
Hopefully,
Hopefully.
but we have a path,
Furthest we've come
and that's been
Right?
huge.
a huge goal of this district and the school committee for a long time. So hopefully that makes it through and we realize
It'll
that.
make it easier on a lot of people.
So, great.
Okay.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Ms.
you.
Owen,
That
for the
was
budget
wonderful.
discussion.
One more thing.
We have one more thing, food service. I understand we have a job description for Assistant Director of Food Service. Oh,
So I put that up on the screen. This has been in discussions for a while. We've met multiple times. And this is a solution that we think is a great idea that came for a collaboration of subcommittees and food service department. But we'd like to, propose an assistant director of food services / culinary specialist. And this is what the job description would be. This will also help us with the addition of specials and all kinds of things, different meals, bringing multiple choices down to the elementary levels, creating new menus, looking for different improved quality of meals. You can read through it. But it will definitely be an asset. And I think it's a great alternative to what we were originally considering was a chef. But I think this more fits the needs that we're looking for.
So we have the job description on the screen. Given the time, we'll just take that as read into the record. And we have it in our materials on agenda item F3. Are there any questions from the committee? I do have a question, but I'll open the floor for the committee members first. Okay,
And maybe you said this last time, and I just can't remember, but this, I know maybe this isn't a position that exists everywhere, but you checked on how competitive the salary is. Okay, I knew you'd done due diligence, I just want to make sure.
Just to answer this question, we did, there are specific, like Sharon has done that. I think there were like 75 as opposed to substantially less.
Two questions. One, at our last meeting, this was discussed at some length, but there was a question about the job title. I'm assuming you nailed down the job title, and this is the final job title.
Yes, the assistant director of food services is probably more came from the subcommittee, but the actual food service director and staff would like to see the culinary specialist also there.
I support whatever name is.
So it's a combination.
I think it gives us flexibility. This, person gives more depth to their responsibilities by naming it both.
Because a lot of times the assistant director doesn't do the cooking. They don't do it, they don't do a lot of cooking, so the culinary specialist would bring in the cooking piece.
And this is a recommendation from this is the food services subcommittee.
Yes.
It's a recommendation from the school food services committee and the administration.
Yes.
Correct.
Excellent. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to approve the job description and the position of assistant food director of food services / culinary specialist. So moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call, Mr. Kearney,
Aye.
Mr. Carr,
Aye.
Ms. St. Ange.
Aye.
Mr. McCollum.
Aye.
Mr. Dial, aye. Mr. Superintendent Sullivan, you have a new position, Director of Food Services Culinary Specialist. Congratulations. Please go acquire people.
A lot of accomplishments in this meeting, I'd say.
Yeah, great. Ms. Owen, you did give us an update on transportation in your plenary remarks. Do you have anything to add for the specific bullet here?
I do not.
Excellent. Mr. McClellan, any report from our school facilities committee?
There's been a lot going on, but it's pretty late, and we've gone through meeting with the advisory relative to the feasibility study warrant article that we're proposing. Again, we're not asking anyone for money, we're just asking for the town to have the ability to consider this important community issue. We presented to advisory, we presented it to capital budget, and we presented it initially to select board. So we're gonna go before select board again soon. And then select board is the body that, as you know, decides whether or not it will make a warrant as an article for town meeting. And we will keep you posted as to what happens there.
Great. Thank you very much. That concludes our budget resource and governance. We're now community relations and communication. Any reports from our school committee, subcommittees, and or liaisons?
We talked about our budget and finance things. I think we're up to speed there. I just want to flag one note. on the other committees that are monitoring, work that needs the help of lawyers is for whatever reason delayed. So what, if there's MOUs or anything like that, it seems to be consistently among other groups outside of us, that the lawyer process is a little bit delayed. So if there's anything that we need to do in that regard, we should get in line. So
Thank you. I'm very aware how lawyers can slow things down.
I just think it's overload. I think it's, I don't think anybody's not doing their job. It's behind.
Thank you for that.
I do have a wellness committee meeting that we had today at 3:30. One of the, we meet 4 times a year. It's a wellness committee for the community. One of the things, couple of things that we broke down to subcommittees was the website. How do we get that more functional to be able to find things for kids' needs such as wellness? We saw that it was really broad to say wellness on our website. It was kind of like, where do we go for? Is it so, when you say wellness, you're talking emotional, physical, social, emotional. So it was more to try to see where we could pivot and have more like what specific part of wellness you're looking for. So one of the questions that came up that I wanted to ask is who would be in charge? So if we were to take some ideas, who would we ticket it to? Like in my business, when you want to change something on the website, is there a person that takes care of the website? So you're the one that's.
Well, yes, and
So, right, so I have a team, right, so I was just gonna say, I just facilitate, but yeah, so there's a team and I met with them last week.
Okay.
So they have stipend positions, so we have 3 people in the system, so we had great dialogue, I told them that we wanted some changes. And so I'm working with them, but yeah, so anything that we do, we'll look towards, and they make all the changes, so
Yeah.
we're kind of putting some processes in place to make sure that there's a system that's right. To
So
request changes.
as a committee, could we, when we adjusted at my company, we put like a ticket together, ticket.
That's what, we don't actually have that in place right now,
Okay,
so we are going to create that.
okay, great, because those are some of the things we talked about is how do we update the website for the wellness program? The other thing is, which was some really good ideas, was some of the after-school programs that we've been working with Dr. Sullivan, keeping the fitness center open from 3 to 6, we'll get that going. Also keeping the learning center open, and try to get maybe a stipend to fund it. So that we probably need you at that meeting.
yeah, absolutely. We've been discussing that.
Yeah, so we're looking at doing that. We're also, when we do open the fitness center, we'd like to do a grand opening along with some tables for clubs. So that you go in and you open the fitness center and then you'd have like a chess table, or debate club, different tables during that event. So
Great.
that was a student's idea. I think that was a great idea. Also too, I gotta be honest, I was a little disappointed on the level of participation by the staff. Normally this started off with, 20 people, and today it was 4 or 5 of us.
At the meeting?
At the
Yeah, there were a
meeting.
lot of people that, I got 5 or 6 emails from people that said they couldn't attend.
Yeah, because
and
one
so-
of the other things that is a concern that we brought up is physical activity in the elementary grades. We're trying to get 45 minutes of physical activity on the books. And there really wasn't anybody there from those particular schools to be able to advocate for it.
Yeah.
So
So,
I think at the next meeting, I'd like to see at least the gym teacher from the.
yeah, Mr. Dykes normally does, and he now is running an after-school program that happens to be on the Wednesdays, and it's been extended for the rest of the year, so.
It's
that's
running
good.
club, if it makes you
Yeah,
feel
it's a running
better.
club.
I saw
Yeah.
the children
Yeah.
running laps.
Yeah,
around
oh,
here.
yeah, sure. No, I get that. Like I said, this is a specific ask from the committee to add 45 minutes of physical activity to the elementary program. And there was really no plan, so it was kind of like, I just want to emphasize that that needs to be addressed. That's very important that children get at least 45 minutes. I think that's about it.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Kearney.
Just a quick reminder, because it applies to many families, just the rec fair coming up on March 26th at Deer Hill, 1 to 4, so that people can register for rec, precious spots for summer. March 26th, 1 to 4, Deer Hill.
Thank you very much.
Good reminder, right?
It is. Moving, I think that closes out our community relations communications. That brings us to our agenda block H, school committee governance. There are no topics not reasonably anticipated by me, which brings us to approval of minutes. We have lots of minutes to approve, and because they're a bit on the older vintage, it is a little bit of a unique approval item. So there are 8 sets of minutes that will be approved, and Mr. Carr, you can zone out. We are not part of the meeting for those minutes, so you don't have to worry about those. And nor was I. So this 8 set of minutes goes from January to May of 2021. I'll just list out the dates so that we have them. January 6th, January 20th, February 3rd, February 24th, April 7th, April 28th, May 5th, May 19th. I acknowledge there's another piece of minutes in there, but I'm going to take these in 2 blocks because I can't vote on the second one.
Yep.
So with that, I will open the floor to anyone who has discussions about those, or questions, comments about those minutes. And if none, I'd entertain a motion to approve them as a block with the note that neither Mr. Carr nor I will be able to vote.
So
We have a motion from Mr. Kearney, motion from Mr. McClellan. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, so it's a vote of 3 to 5 of the committee members, but it's the quorum and only the 3 that can. The next set of minutes is the infamous August 16th meeting where we spent several hours talking about mask policies. I do want to table that, the approval there, because I know I want to make sure that the actual text of the resolutions are reflected in the minutes, just for the record. So I just want to, and I concede that I have not spent the time to review it that I should. So I'm going to table the approval of that until the next meeting.
Mr. Chairman, might I note just 3 different revisions that I noticed from this,
In the,
these August 16th?
yeah, since we're not going to put it for approval, you can just give it.
Okay, I'll give it to you off the record.
Guinness
Can you
book
skip
has,
it?
Or yes, actually, you better give it.
That's why I was doing it.
Yeah.
So on page 2, Mrs. St. Ange, the first sentence where it says school committee, it's school community at large.
Oh, sure.
And then same change there's a sentence about 3/4 of the way down that same paragraph. It starts everyone in the school committee.
Community.
It's the school community, exactly. And then lastly, in the penultimate line of that paragraph, you'll see it starts health, the school physician, or the CTA. Everyone, strike in, and it should read, everyone here has the best interest of our students in mind. So strike in and is with.
And everything for the anti-penultimate line.
No,
Guinness
Um,
Book of World
Thank you.
Records contacted me about that meeting.
that was wrong.
Stressful.
That was a great meeting. That
Did we
was,
I was,
that was true representation in action, in my opinion.
Yeah.
so we will table that piece.
So
And
I'll add the final language of the resolution.
yes, let's put that in there,
Yep.
just so we have it
Yeah.
reflected there.
Absolutely.
And this is, and now future agenda items, I'll just open it up quickly to see if there's any suggestions for future agenda items.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'd like to, if we could, talk about after-school programs.
Yes, that's on our short list.
Yes, we have mentioned
Especially
that.
especially if we can have some discussion before the committee.
Before the what?
Next wellness committee, no, so.
Yeah, that was on the order of.
If we can,
It'll be,
if we can get that, that's really rocking and rolling.
Mr. Chairman, I guess the only other thing is, we did, in the subcommittee, talked a little bit further about, the role we could play to make sure that we, communicate well around the second town meeting. So maybe we could have 5 minutes to just come up with some tactics for the board to consider to help encourage people to attend.
that's also been on our list.
Yeah, let's go ahead and just write that in for our next agenda item to have town meeting strategy. I think that's very valuable. Mr. McClellan, you,
Yeah,
5 minutes.
very quickly, just wanted to recognize our secretaries, Commissioner St. Ange, for the minutes, because it's a huge responsibility. It's a really big task. It's thankless and it's an uncommon task. So I just wanted to thank Ms. St. Ange for going through all that, and that's a really big thing to have to do. So thank you.
All of the rest of the backlog before I'm
Well,
done.
forget that. I
Before
mean,
I'm done. No, I'm just saying, not saying that as an excuse, and I acknowledge your thanks. I thank you for that.
And Ms.
It's
Bach for
just-
the minutes too. right?
Well, those are all mine.
Yes,
The 816 is her.
Yeah.
But there was a gap in coverage, and
Yes.
that's why there was a gap in my output. So yes, Mrs. Bach did the 816 ones, and I will update those with the others.
And lastly, I just would like the doctors to look into our elementary for a future agenda item. Potential future agenda, our elementary technology curriculum. I want to know how much we can update it, given what the requirements are. They are basically learning how to type. And I don't see why we need to be teaching kids to type. I feel like we should teach them how to like do useful things on tablets or like like it should be like I was learning how to type. No one need,
Yeah, they need to know how to type. Do you want them to take the MCAS?
no, so, but I think as a point of
they don't need to know
clarification,
how to type to write papers.
Yeah.
but as a point of clarification, I think we can explain what we're doing because we are doing more.
So I think generally elementary.
You don't need to learn how to do this. Like, you don't need to learn how to do that. No, you don't. I never
So we're
did.
following standards.
I still don't know.
Yes, right, yeah.
You don't need to learn.
But this is a discussion.
Read further time.
So let's,
This is standards.
Right, exactly. I don't know how much it's restricted.
so, there is no reason to move to executive session. So with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved, second, by Mr. Mathana, all in favor? All opposed? Thank you very much for your marathon attention at this long, but very productive meeting of the Cohasset School Committee.
Thank you very much, everybody.